All right. And we are live. Okay, so, gosh, there's lots to go over. And I guess while we're just waiting for a few people to show up, looks like there's 0 viewers at the moment. I'm sure they'll change in a second. But if you want to get a shout out, go ahead and put your name in the side and I'll give you a shout out. It's nice to see everyone. I'm just going to take the last bite or two of dinner here. I have the time management skills of a snail with a glue sniffing problem. So eating a little dinner here at the very end. It's like 8:30 at night and I'm just now eating first meal of the day. Okay. We got people now. All right. So first off, I want to say thank you to Daniel Zach Smith for the super sticker. Thank you so much. Also, I want to respond to Giddy Up Mofo. Hey, brother. Great to see you. And it's, I responded to it in the chat and I'll put the response up, but it's $484 for the full 4 classes in total. And I have the ability to send people the pages from the book that we'll be using if they're not able to get it in time. And I had planned on closing the registration for it last night, but I'm actually going to keep the Angelic Magic class registration open until tonight at midnight. So if anyone else is interested in that, it is closing today. So that's the response to you. And then let's see, Fly Over Me is here as well. Oh, okay. So these are like Q&A stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna do the rest of the Q&A other than that Giddy Up Mofo response in the second half, and I'm actually gonna write that Q&A will be in the second half. I'll try to answer all the questions, but the super chats are given priority. Okay, and so I'm just going to put that up, and then we will launch into it, start talking about the Shadow Wars. And actually today what I want to do a little bit different from normal is that I don't follow a lot of actual other astrologers. You know, I do astrology, so like, why would I? There's like 1 or 2 Vedic astrologers that I sometimes follow their work, but one of them, like, I'd follow him, but he's like, oh, he like is constantly inserting. I mean, obviously this channel I do it, but if I were talking about astrology, just pure astrology, I would try not to insert politics into it too much. And this guy cannot resist. And he's always pushing left-wing narratives. I'm sure he's freaking out about Trump. And, you know, like, it just turns me off. And so I stopped paying attention to it. But there's a couple of Western astrologers I pay attention to. And one of them is Jamie Goldstein, who does Astrology with Jamie. And she talked about I also don't pay a ton. I don't pay a ton of attention to transits generally. I work on natal charts primarily, and I don't usually look at transits unless I'm doing very specific kinds of charts. And so despite being an astrologer, I'm very often not paying attention to what's going on in the heavens because I'm more focused on all the natal charts I'm doing, and I get kind of exhausted. And so I do like to look at other people's work sometimes. And so Astrology with Jamie is also a friend of the show. She'll be on the channel eventually. So she's a friend of mine as well. But she is literally, like, if not the best Western astrologer, she's right up there. And it's kind of crazy because she's pretty young. She's like mid-30s, I think. And most astrologers that are at her level are in their 60s or 70s, really. She's more learned than I am for sure in astrology. So anyways, I'm just going to read this because this is amazing work. So we're in this, so I'm just going to read what she wrote. We are in a window of powerful transformation potential as the sun applies to conjunct Pluto at 29 degrees 59 arc minutes Capricorn. So they're exactly like 0 degrees conjunct, and they're in that final degree, in fact, final arc minute of Capricorn, and then they both the next day move into Aquarius together. So she says the exact conjunction and ingress into Aquarius occurs tomorrow, January 20th. The sun shines the light of illumination on something within our unconscious that is ready to transform, perhaps around a theme that has come up again and again since Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008. I also want to point out that Pluto is a generational planet, and it also kind of speaks of like the experiences of a generation. And interestingly enough, my oldest son was born in 2008, so he'll be turning 16 later this year. And so it's funny because Pluto in Capricorn would show centralization of power and like oligarchy and that kind of thing, whereas Pluto in Aquarius shows power to the people. And so it's interesting because Obama, of course, won the election in 2008, and there was the big economic crash. So then she goes on and she says, even though Pluto will retrograde back into Capricorn again later this year, this is the last time the sun will conjunct Pluto and Capricorn, giving us an opportunity to clear an old karmic pattern and regenerate our life force, creative energy through the alchemy of that. When Pluto is activated, what's in the depth of our emotional waters gets churned up. Take a moment to reflect on any emotional triggers coming up for you this week. They've been coming fast and furious this week, especially very old patterns like my brother, who is sadly a Biden Democrat, I guess. Totally went off the deep end on me earlier this week. We're actually able to work through it in part because I didn't actually repeat the pattern of normally I would have been filled with rage at him, but I kept my cool amazingly enough. So she goes on, she says, as the sun meets Pluto at the last degree in Arcman of Capricorn, you may feel a gravitational pull towards old patterns. Even if you get swept up in the current of your unconscious and old patterns for a moment, this is an opportunity to take responsibility for them and to realign with integrity. Are you ready to commit to transformation and up-leveling? Is anything coming up for you where you're outsourcing your power to others or blaming external situations or circumstances? This is an initiation to become empowered through self-responsibility and integrity. This is an opportunity to transform any conditioning from the falling away dominator culture, Malachians, right, that still has a hold on us, so we may have more life force energy available to devote to our sacred purpose. What is no longer serving your truest version of yourself and your path that you're ready to surrender so you can root down and rise up in more of your truth and commit to your path with more of a steadiness, no matter what's going on in the outside world. It might be a self-limiting belief system that has kept you stuck in fear or doubt that you are ready to transform. Is there something your ego is trying to control that you're ready to surrender? One of the things that's been coming up for me this week, and just for a while now, probably as this conjunction was approaching, is I was raised and kind of grew up as a people pleaser. And so 95%, I would say, plus of the comments on this channel are very positive and wonderful and whatever. And about 5% aren't. And of course, I immediately am like, get out the telescopic lens. Did I see a singular comment that was less than awesome? Oh no, what did they say about me? Oh no, I'm going to really dwell on this random person on the internet's thoughts and feelings about me. And so that's actually the one I'm trying to like really figure out. I feel like I kind of broke this pattern I had with my brother, but this is so spot on. And she's always like this. She's just crazy. I got to have her on the show at some point. So let's see. Is there something your ego is trying to control that you're ready to surrender? And I think it's like, I need to let go of that. Not everyone is going to like me. Not everyone's going to like me. And that's just how it is, you know, and people are going to say stuff and that's their own thing. And I can't please everyone, which is deeply relaxing for me because I twist myself in a pretzel trying to please people. Something new and more aligned to your truth awaits on the other side of the threshold. Gosh, I really want to drop this here. As Pluto enters Aquarius, we are invited to remember the power of our attention and intention to co-create reality around us, as Aquarius reminds us of how everything is connected. The higher timeline brings an opportunity to restore and reclaim our co-creative power that many have forgotten. She's just so good. We have a collective opportunity to stop building the world that the few corrupt at the top have orchestrated and manipulated the masses to go along with. Take back our creative power and collectively create a more beautiful, vibrant, and loving world. There are many layers to the energy of Pluto and Aquarius that we'll experience on a personal and collective level, particularly around technology. With Uranus, the wisdom keeper of the Aquarian mysteries, in Taurus, at the time Pluto enters Aquarius next week, and again later this year, we are reminded that we can tap into the miraculous power of our own organic technology, the innate intelligence of our body. I just want to point out that Aquarius rules technology and Uranus rules Aquarius in Western astrology, right? It's Saturn it's the higher aspect of Saturn in Vedic astrology, but it's the it's Uranus in Western astrology. And so it's fascinating to me because one of the things that's going to happen during this time period is the ultra tech is going to get released, right? The anti-gravity, the free energy, maybe things like med beds, that could exist. There's technology beyond our wildest dreams that they have, and it's going to get released during this time frame of when Pluto's in Aquarius. And if you think technology has been transformative in the past few years, the other day I was talking to my 15-year-old son, and I was explaining him to that my father grew up on a farm in the 40s in Montana. He was born in 43 up in Montana, and he had to literally follow a rope out to the barn in snowstorms when he was like 6 years old at 4:30 in the morning to milk a cow. I grew up in a city. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and just an incredibly different experience. I've seen basically the personal computer, right? The internet, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the collapse of the Twin Towers, 9/11, the iPhone, right? iPad, like portable tablet technology, and blockchain technology now. And then let's see, what's the other big disruptive one? 3D printing, so much. And yet my life has seen less change in it than my son's life in 15 years. And there's a bigger gulf between, I think, what my son will experience in his life than I experienced from my father. And there's a much bigger gulf between me and my father than there is between my father and his father, who also grew up on a farm, right? Like their life was much more similar. The rate of change because of technology is hard to overstate. And yet this technology that is currently kept in these special access programs or whatever, it is going to revolutionize things beyond our wildest imagination. We will not be able to even imagine what the world is going to look like in 15 years. Yes, there's going to be disruption, and there's going to be, catastrophes, and there'll be wars during that period of time. But on the other side of it, which the angels have told me in 2030 will be on the other side of it, it's going to be absolutely amazing. Bibu Dev Mizra has a later date of like 2032 or 2034, but to some degree close enough, right? Similar timeline. So, and by the way, part 2 of the Bibu Dev Mizra interview, the second interview, will be coming out in a few days. So let's see here. She talked about the organic technology, right? Which to me, psychic abilities, magical abilities, that's part of our organic technology. That's not quite what I don't think what this woman's talking about, the innate intelligence of their body, but I know that she believes in that, sort of thing, and she is quite psychic and all this kind of stuff. So, but I'm saying I'm seeing an additional layer, right? Because the angels have also told me that magic is going to be much more powerful, basically, in the coming age. She goes on to say, the more we inhabit our bodies and create spaciousness to just be in our own energy, the more we can receive and listen to the wisdom of our body to navigate this time of wild change. I couldn't agree with that more. Fine-tuning our discernment will be highly important, and the discernment of our body wisdom to feel into the truth will be especially valuable with this transit. I love that. As Neptune activates the 29 degrees Pisces point this year, remember that things are likely not what they seem. This leads perfectly into the show. Neptune at 29 degrees Pisces will be a collective initiation to pull back the veil of illusion and open up to our spiritual gifts to dream a new dream into reality for our world. And then she goes on to talk about, she had the Astrology of 2024 Astro Priestess Roundtable. And so Astrology with Jamie is, you can find her here on your YouTube as well. She just does really great work. And I just was so impressed by that particular thing that I just thought I wanted to start the show with it, because we really are in just this incredibly transformative time. You see it everywhere, and it's really amazing. And so I'm going to be super fast and loose tonight with sort of what I talk about, because I just had an absolutely insane week. I've been really busy. And so there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about, but most of it is kind of centered on all the events at Davos this week, right? It's hard not to talk about Davos, right, the Malachian hive mind mothership, when they're having their actual physical meeting. Every year I hold out hope that a bit of the toroid meteor shower might rain down upon that alpine location and cleanse the planet and do us all a favor. But alas, that has never happened, nor has Rods of God or any of the other fantasies I've had about how we might deal with a lot of the problem all at once. Mind you, the real shot callers are not there in Davos. Their direct representatives are, right? Like maybe 2 layers removed from them. But the real problem people are, they don't attend Davos, right? The Malachians, the like high priests of Moloch and the Babylonian black sorcerers, those guys don't go there. Maybe some of the lower tier ones of them do, but by and large they don't go there. But they're talking to someone the whole time and telling them what agendas to push and so forth, of course. So, gosh, you know, I've been going back and forth about a particular person, Jamie Dimon. Well, it's funny, Jamie and Jamie. Jamie is the name of that astrologer woman. But anyways, Jamie Dimon, the head of JP Morgan, I've been going back and forth, but I think that he's actually Luciferian because he's been pushing back on the globalists like quite a lot. I know, obviously, JP Morgan did the Epstein money, right? But again, like, you know, Trump flew one time on Epstein's plane. They hung out with each other a number of times. They were around each other, him or Ghislaine Maxwell. But that doesn't mean that, you know, Trump went to Davos. Musk has gone to Davos. Just because someone has gone to Davos doesn't mean that they're on the Malachian team, even though generally that's what it means, right? As a general rule of thumb, you could just say most of those people are Malachian, but they're all Malachian and Luciferian. There's probably no most high people pretty much going to this, right? It's the power brokers on the planet. And most of them are, at least outwardly currently, working with the Malachian set there. And so Jamie Dimon was being interviewed, and he shockingly said that Trump was right about everything, right? He was right about China. He was right, and he rattled it all off. And this guy's, you know, this is the CEO of JP Morgan. That's not a guy who you can just be like, cut the mic, go to commercial, right? They had to just let him talk. And they tried to like reel him in or whatever. He was basically saying, oh, I don't like the things Trump says, but you got to admit he was right about China. He was right about strong borders. He was right about the economy and the way he was handling the economy. And I was just like, he was just like totally pro-Trump. And he kind of like threw a little more shade at Davos and the ESG DEI stuff at some point during the interview as well, I believe. And certainly he's been pushing back on ESG and DEI for a while. Now, I'm not trying to say this is a good guy. I'm just trying to say I think he might be a Luciferian. Nonetheless, shocking to see that said there in Davos. But that looked like Jamie Dimon was really pro-Moloch and Biden compared to Javier Milei and his like frickin' like truth carpet bombing that he did during his speech. And that guy's definitely Luciferian. I worry about that guy. That guy scares me a bit. The new Argentinian president. He has just kind of like a wild and aggressive energy that just makes me nervous, right? Geert Wilders I'm not as worried about in Holland or Malone in Italy. But that Javier Milei guy, of the different like major Luciferian figures, he's kind of like a harsher, scarier one. And plus it's in Argentina, right? And what else is in Argentina? Oh, right, a lot of the Nazi diaspora went to Argentina, and they still have a huge power base there. That's why almost all presidents go down there to San Carlos de Bariloche and meet with someone down there. Obama did, and all the presidents Obama and before did. I don't know that Trump did, but pretty much every president since the end of World War II has gone down to San Carlos de Bariloche down there in Argentina. Why? Well, supposedly Martin Bormann was down there, and they even had like a check signed by him. And Martin Bormann basically was, at the end of the Nazi Party, he ran everything. So Bormann being down there is actually more significant than Hitler being seen down there in Brazil and Peru and so forth. So interesting. But Javier Milei absolutely went off at Davos. I mean, he absolutely went off. And then they bizarrely had a guy from the Heritage Foundation, which, what did they think he was going to say, right? That's a pretty far right in the U.S., whatever political organization. And when I say far right, I just mean like traditionalist right, really. You know, they're reasonably libertarian, but they definitely have a big dollop of kind of Christian type stuff in there, right? And very traditionalist just in general. They invited that guy to Davos, which is a bit of a head scratcher why they'd invite that guy. It makes me think that the Luciferians are doing narrative prepping at Davos and getting the message out there. And that Heritage Foundation guy made Javier Milei look really restrained. He like went off the deep end. He said, you guys have the balls to say you're defending democracy. You guys are the antithesis of democracy. And if I had one piece of advice to everybody on earth, I'd say, do the opposite of the WEF has proposed to you and roll back any policies the WEF told you to implement, roll them back. That would be my advice to people. I mean, he just went off the deep end. So 3 different, interesting that it's 3, and there might be more that I haven't heard about yet, but 3 major, I don't know, Luciferian sounding messages being sent right there in the heart of Davos, you know, in the heart of Moloch country, basically. That to me is like a game changer. We saw a little whiff of it last year. Musk didn't go, and Musk, you know, shot the main guns at Davos, which he did again this week. He's been talking shit about Davos and the WF all week, right? But last year he didn't attend Davos. He has in the past, but he went to the World Government Summit, and he gave an anti-globalization and centralization speech, and he got a scattering of applause that were pretty enthusiastic, the people who were doing it, but it was a scattering. And the rest of the people were like, oh shit, can we even say these things that Musk just said? Like they were scared to even say it. And he was saying that there needs to be a global governance structure to some degree, but that there needs to be real decentralization of power. And it can't be this Molochian, like hive mind, ultra centralized power. People have to have liberty, you know, they need to have rights. He said all this stuff and he got scattered applause. When Javier Milei did his speech, he got actually pretty rousing applause, talking about like that Western modernity was under assault and that it was the woke crap that was doing it. I mean, this is stunning. I mean, this is very difficult to explain unless you're, you know, there's 2 ways to explain it, which is the way I see things, right? Or the black-pilled, oh, all the elites are in perfect unison. The elites have already thought of every single angle for everything. We're doomed. There's nothing you could do. You know, that kind of black-pilled nonsense, which is just really self-defeating, you know, as I talk about often on this channel. So let's see, what else do I want to say about Davos before I continue on? I'm going to spend more time in the Q&A tonight because there's been so much Q&A that it's made me go super long the last couple times. I don't want to go that long. I'm just going to take a quick second before going on to talk a little bit more about some events that have been happening in politics and so forth, just to just say hi to people in the chat. So hi, Giddy Up Mofo. Hi, Flay Over Me. Hey, Daniel Zach Smith. And I'm gonna get to all these Q&A. I would like if people like give everyone a chance to ask questions and don't just spam with questions. If other people aren't asking questions, that's fine, but try not to like do tons of questions in a row. That's kind of not fair to the other people, and it's also it's a lot for me. So hey to Raka36, hey to Harvey Harry. Oh, right on in Amsterdam. Cool. Hey, what's up, Harv Harry? What's up, dude? Cool. From Amsterdam. So cool. I love Amsterdam. I freaking love Amsterdam. It's so great. It's I'm excited for you guys getting Garrett Welders in over there. I think that'll help. Alex, fantastic. Good to see you, brother. Former Angelic Magic student. Clint, former Magic student. When will we hear more of the prophecies from the virtues? Yeah, damn it. I meant to listen to that before the show tonight. And I just have been so damn busy recently. I haven't had a chance to do that. I definitely, I promise you I will do that. In fact, the angels are even in my ear. I can't just play the recording because first of all, the speaker wouldn't pick it up because my voice is very faint. Also, I can't just release it unfiltered because some of it's very personal to me. And some of it's stuff that's not meant to be shared publicly. That was for me, and so I have to like listen to it first. I definitely will sometime soon. I'll just make a promise. By next week in the next live chat at the latest, I will do it. I'm really sorry. Yeah, it was pretty crazy and off the chain. So I do want to share it. Hey, what's up, Brent? Good to see you. There's a literal Chad in the chat. Big household names arrested and brought to justice for how confident am I? Extremely, if you're talking in the long run, say 3 to 5 years. If you're talking this year, I don't know. It could happen this year. It could start this year. I kind of think it'll happen after Trump is in office again, and that it will happen very rapidly. Yeah. So, anyways, but I'm trying to answer all these questions. There's Mr. Parahesian. There's Luck Within. Giddy Up Mofo is in the house. Awesome to have you, by the way, in the angelic magic class. That's awesome. I think there's one more slot maybe in Australia Oceania, although it might be, that one might be full. And then there's, I think, 1 or 2 more slots in the US angelic magic class. And there's a bunch of people in the chat who have like Daniel Zach Smith and Alex and Clint and I think even one more, and Brent, who have all been in the angelic magic class, and they all, well, I mean, I won't speak for them, but I believe it was pretty transformative for them. That's what most of them have said to me. So let's see here. Okay, so let's see. What else did I want to talk about that happened this week? Gosh, there's just been stuff has been happening so fast. I don't even have time to process one thing like the Miami aliens thing. Like, what the hell even was that? You know, there's some new, I don't know if it's new or they're just talking about it again, the jellyfish UFO, which just sounds like it's a balloon cluster again to me. Walter Bosley was going off about people who take it at face value. I tend to trust Walter's pretty discerning, and he doesn't have much time for bullshit in the UFO community, while at the same time he's really you know, he is actually very open-minded. He just is like, he has a much higher threshold than someone claims to have been abducted by blue chicken aliens. You know what I mean? Like he has a higher standard of evidence, but for some people in the UFO community is just tell me about the aliens. Like you had me at aliens. I don't need any more context. Please just spin whatever wild yarn you want. I'm going to believe it. It's aliens, and aliens are cool as hell. Right? You know, that kind of thing that it is a little bit of a problem, especially in the UFO community, where people just aren't discerning in what they share. And nowadays, I mean, my goodness, it's so hard for anyone to figure out what's going on because people have been shaken and rattled from so many different corners, you know, and especially people who have recently awakened in the last 3 or 4 years. Like, I've had 23 years this year, so 22 years and change to kind of come to grips with the way the world works, with, you know, knowing about the Babylonian black sorcerers like 22 years ago, learning about the Bush family and the Nazis, learning about, I actually did learn about the black nobility back then, but it didn't click for me until many, many years later. That is when I first heard it, was during that same period of time, but for whatever reason, it didn't click. And just knowing that they were going to do a massive depopulation event, like that was all over the conspiracy wires for decades. And so awakening back then, it took me a long time to come out of the black-pilled portion. It took me a long time to come out of anger or going back into denial or otherwise just being unhinged in my approach to, I don't know, conspiracy theory, for lack of a better word. And I dealt with that shock, and so I've been able to see how things have developed, and in particular since Cass Sunstein, the Obama appointee, started saying we need to make fake conspiracies and invade the conspiracy theory milieu, right? Like, I actually had a guy, this interview will come out later, but he's from the Forbidden Knowledge News channel, and I actually meant to interview someone else. I got 2 different dudes confused, but it ended up being a good interview. It's actually up on his channel already. If you want to watch that, Forbidden Knowledge News, or he said he was going to put it up on his channel today anyways. I don't know if he did. But we talked about just the way that because we've both been in this sort of conspiracy game for a while. For me, since 2001, for him, since, you know, he started his show in 2016, but I'm pretty sure he was paying attention to all this stuff for, like, you know, a long time before that. He definitely knows his stuff. And we were just talking about how sort of this truther field, which includes everything from UFOs to angels and magic and, Babylonian black sorcerers and all the intelligence stuff, JFK, 9/11, all that kind of stuff, right? How people who've been in that milieu, if you've been it long enough, you've seen major changes. And the big changes really started happening, in my opinion, in 2010, after Cass Sunstein wrote a policy paper saying the only way to deal with conspiracy theorists, and in particular 9/11 truth people, is we have to invade conspiracy theory circles. It's the classic COINTELPRO thing, right? And that means that there's tons of fake conspiracies. We can know this because they told us they were going to do this. So then it's just a question of which ones are they, right? We know which ones they are. I talk about all the time on this channel. It's ones that make claims for things older than 9/11, but those theories didn't exist until 2010 or later. And the big three are flat Earth, viruses don't do damage, and Tartaria. I lived with my great-grandfather who lived to be 100 years old. He was born in, I want to say, he was born in 1884, I think. I think that's right. And he died in 1984, right? But he lived with my family, and he regaled me with stories all the time of the 1800s. He talked about, he fought against Pancho Villa. He was a Texas Ranger. He helped explore Carlsbad Caverns. In fact, he mistaked me for the little guide boy when he was getting really old. I was like, "Hey, great grandpa," and he just didn't recognize me. He was getting old and senile, and he thought I was this little Native American guide boy who knew about those caves, and he kept calling me by that name. And he talked about the 1918 pandemic. He talked about that a lot because his experience with that was particularly traumatic. He was a young man at the time, and he had the massive immune response to it. And at the time when people went into a coma, they were like, well, shit, we got to move on to the ones we can save. And my great-grandfather went into a coma, and they put him stacked with dead bodies in a room because he's lucky he didn't get buried alive, but the ground was frozen because it was wintertime. And he told me that detail. And he told me how he had to scream and yell and scream and yell, and they finally came in and got him out of the dead bodies. And so he would have been alive at a time when people who had lived through this obviously bullshit global mud flood would have lived through that. That would have been just a decade before him. Think about that. People who weren't alive, my son is sick and tired of hearing about 9/11, which happened almost 10 years before he was born, right? My parents talked all the time about where they were when JFK got shot, right? So for a while, people were talking about the fall of the Berlin Wall because that was a pretty big event. Boomers would never shut up about the 60s and how great it was to have all that sex and take all those drugs and go to sweet concerts and stuff. It's all they talked about. Or they would talk about the Vietnam War all the time. So you really think this catastrophic mud flood that wiped out half the globe, like it slipped people's mind? Like my grandpa just never heard it, despite that, supposedly the population was decimated by it? That doesn't make any sense. Come on, right? It's just like that guy who said to me the other day, the Roman Empire doesn't exist. Like, if you wanted to completely restructure history, you need to do a few different things. You need to discredit mainstream history. They've certainly done a robust job of discrediting academia, right? And faith and authority. They've done a, bang up job of that. But then you got to replace it, right? And so you start to replace it piecemeal with these nonsense things like explaining Belle Epoque European beautiful architecture, right? Which was kind of during one of those Luciferian surges where there was less war and greater cultural upwelling in the late 1800s in Europe, and they didn't have any wars other than there's the Boer War in South Africa and stuff like that, but there was no European wars in Europe. There might have been proxy wars here and there in the third world, but there were no direct conflicts. And so Europe got super built up during that time, and they made beautiful buildings. And those buildings weren't some super high-tech Atlantis that was like I say, basically within the living memory of my great-grandfather. And certainly there was no fucking mud flood. That's the part of that story that always made no sense to me. That there's high-tech buildings or that there's ancient buildings that are around. Yeah, the star fort thing's weird. Like, what's that about? Like, how did I never hear about star forts until just a few years ago? I was super into castles when I was young, and I read everything I could about it. Never once heard of a star fort. It's like, that's one of those Mandela effect things that is not, not forgetting that Sinbad made a shitty movie called Shazam, but like, there's a massive physical object there. What? You know, like, there's a star fort here in Oregon. And also, why were they making star forts supposedly in the 1800s when people weren't using, they weren't using soldiers on the ground the same way. They were using artillery because the Napoleonic War had happened. Those star forts were to split up formations of medieval style, squads of soldiers, or like phalanxes and various different formations of soldiers. It was to break up those formations and you can take them apart from above. Why would you make those in the 1880s or whatever? Like, that just doesn't make any sense. And yet these star forts are everywhere. So there's questions I have about some of the stuff, but Tartaria seems, especially the mud flood part, that's definitely bullshit. And it seems like it's to lead people astray and to also start this process of something else the Tartaria people all do, and as does someone that I'm certain is a disinfo agent, is they claim all the knowledge only exists in these super old books, and go to Google and their book scans to verify what I'm saying. And they'll even provide links sometimes. And sure enough, there is this thing and it's talking about stuff. And it just like, it felt funny to me when I was like researching this Tartaria stuff. I was like, there's something off about this. And then when I found this person who my antenna went way up, that this person is a bullshitter and a scam artist, and turns out they have a criminal record and a huge following, and they just absolutely blew up in an absolutely insane way, which is, I will tell you, my channel is heavily suppressed. Black Swan Capitals has barely been able to add anyone, despite the fact that they're the best crypto channel, hands down, on YouTube. They're the best crypto channel on YouTube, and they do great macroeconomic analysis, but they also talk about naughty politics. So they get suppressed, and they should be at 250,000, 300,000 subs. They can't crack like 23 or 26 or whatever they're at. They've been stagnant for months, and they say all the time they see the counter going down. I see that all the time. So this obvious disinfo person makes the same claim. Look at my ancient books. Oh, you don't have that rare book that perhaps the CIA bought all the copies of beforehand? Well, you can rely on my scans or Google scans. And then what does the CIA do? They cut out a piece that says whatever bullshit they want to create a historical artifact, a historical event that never happened, and they drop it into some obscure book that nobody has or that they bought up all the copies of because it's an old book. And then you can just rewrite history carte blanche and make up whatever bullshit you want, and you have to rely on a centralized authority, Google scans, or a questionable person offering a scan to get the real scoop, the real information. And you prey upon people's knowledge that since World War II, there has been a wholesale change to history, right? There's been a lot of stuff that, in particular, there's been a lot of removal of information about the Scythians. There's been a lot of stuff that's kind of extra emphasizing Europeans as being particularly vile, when actually Europeans were just maybe technologically superior. But if you look at the Ottoman Turks, you look at certain dynasties in Asia. I mean, Korea had the longest slavery of any country on earth, the longest continuous slavery. You'd have to go back to the old, in modern times. I think the old king of Egypt had a longer total time span, but Korea very recently had really awful, nasty chattel slavery. There isn't something unique about white people that makes them evil, and yet a lot of modern history kind of points you in that direction. Then you have overtly obvious ones like the 1619 thing, right? So people see that, they feel like, wow, history is really being tampered with. The only way to know is to look at really old books, right? That's a reasonable conclusion to draw. I understand it. But the thing is if these books say shit that's obviously false, like there was a giant global mud flood, come on. Like that's obviously fake, and you should question everything else. And you should also question when people say they're the sole arbiter of truth. I don't believe that. I am not the sole arbiter of truth about anything I talk about in this channel. At the end of the day, it's up to you and your personal discernment. Going back to that astrology thing I read at the beginning, we need to start trusting our inner instincts again. And that can be difficult to do, especially if you're one of the recently awakened and all your trust in all these institutions and authorities has been completely obliterated by the events of the past few years, or maybe going back to 2016. A lot of people woke up with what happened with Trump and the Russia hoax. Or I met someone today, a client today, who said, Me Too woke her up. She was like, believe all women all the time, 100% of the time. There's something wrong with that theory, right? And that was her particular point where she woke up. For me, it was 9/11. And so if you're one of these people that it's been more recent, psychologically, you're casting about for some level of certainty. You're trying to find someone who will just tell you this is how things are, that you can then put your faith in, because it's really scary being in this unknown. It's really scary and anxiety inducing when you don't know what's going to happen. The authorities you trusted your whole life, turns out they're frickin' satanic pedos, right? Or Malachian pedos. Of course, that's going to be deeply upsetting. It's attacked all your core beliefs. The problem is that leaves you in a very vulnerable state for con men and shysters and alternative narratives that can be disempowering or otherwise route you in the direction they want. And one of these alternative narratives is you can't trust science at all. You can't trust reason at all, right? Just trust your feelings. And then you can't trust history at all. But we have a new history for you. Boy, do we. But first, you need to understand that old history, none of it's true. You know who did that? China. It's called the Cultural Revolution. They said, all history before this, we're banning it. We're going to destroy it. And you know who did it before that? The Yellow Emperor. There was clearly civilization in China for much longer than we have records of. But the first emperor of China, the Yellow Emperor, he had destroyed all. He went out of his way. He put just a tremendous amount of effort into destroying all records from prior to his reign. Right? And then the CCP did the exact same thing during the Cultural Revolution. They did their level best to wipe out Chinese history and culture. Why? Because then once you shatter it, you have like the Romans who beat that young child and created a tabula rasa, blank slate, right? You break the spirit of a people, you remove their history and their culture, and you replace it with something else. Be suspicious of anyone that's trying to tell you that everything that came before that you thought was wrong, all of it's wrong. These declaratives, everything we knew was false, everything we knew. No, that's not true. They told me about gravity, bro. Gravity's still a thing. Math still works. There's lots of stuff. They want you to throw the baby out with the bathwater. In this case, that baby being reason, discernment, and trusting your own intuition. And it's easy to doubt your own intuition if you were conditioned into this culture where there's this horrible dominator paradigm, this Malachian paradigm. It's easy to question, man, do I even know how to discern anymore? But you have to start going in and you have to kind of work that muscle. If you've been like trusting your whole life, work that muscle. Work it with me. Don't just trust me. Look into the things I say, please. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm wrong often. Anyone who tells you, oh, I'm always right and I got the receipts. Anyone who says that shit, and that's a hint to who I'm talking about, which I'm sure smart people have already figured out who I'm talking about. And that's not the only disinfo agent. Let me give you another example of this exact thing of bullshit and lack of discernment. What do I talk about all the time on this channel? Kali Yuga is ending in 2025, right? Is that my claim? Well, I did receive that date in Gnosis from the angels. And I thought, wow, that's crazy. And then I remembered, wait a minute, didn't I read an article years ago that said something to that effect? Was it the same date? And I looked at Bibudev Misra's article on Graham Hancock and I read it again. And then the angels came and they gave me more information and just went ka-chunk. This is it, right? Fortunately for me, my claircognizance, my just knowing, was verified by someone else's extremely hard-nosed, hardcore research that I have neither the patience nor the inclination to do. So, props to Bibudev Misra, and his book Yuga Shift is out. buy it. Watched my interviews with him. He's absolutely fantastic. Someone said he was Western and pushing a Western narrative today, and I'm like, that guy has more melanin than a lot of black people in the U.S., and his accent couldn't really get any thicker. What do you mean this guy's Western? They were saying, he's pushing the Western narrative of Atlantis as a golden age when it's clearly part of the fall. Oh, well, all Westerners support anti-human narratives. And I'm like, no, that's not what he says. He says that golden age collapsed, and as part of that, Atlantis became aggressive, which is what Plato told us, that Atlantis became aggressive at the end. So anyways, getting back to this disinfo thing that just happened, I'm sure a lot of you noticed this week that people were suddenly claiming that January 15th was a special Muhurta. It's the Muhurta, and it's the end of Kali Yuga. Okay, yeah, how come there's no records anywhere of something called a Muhurta? Well, there is, but it's not what this man says. Muhurta kind of means timing in Sanskrit, right? But when it's generally used, it's to talk about astrological hours. For example, the Brahma Muhurta is the hour just before sunrise, and I believe it corresponds with the hour of Jupiter. It's not exactly the same thing. They divide, and they have a non-moving division, whereas planetary hours in Western systems move. It doesn't really matter. The point is that there's no Muhurta as this timing of a special time when sacred souls come in, which is what this bald guy who had a very bad vibe was saying in this video that went super mega giga viral. And then another disinfo guy that I know is bad news named Sacha Stone, who's friends with Santos Bonacci, who pushes flat Earth. You guys starting to see some threads here? So Santos Bonacci pushes flat Earth. He's friends with this Sacha Stone, who has some questionable stuff. Even like he keeps all his exes like sex videos and nudes, and maybe their daughters too, which it's unclear if some of that's underage stuff that some people are saying. I don't know. Regardless, this guy's a disinfo agent, and he just comes in and says, well, if you're in the know, and you're the kind of person that understands galactic cycles, and your penis is over 2 inches long, and you're not one of the dumb kids, and you don't want to be late to the next big thing, then obviously you already know it's the end of the Kali Yuga, because it's this blah, blah, blah. And so why were they doing that? I believe that this was a dye the waters operation where they wanted to see which channels, which influencers are going to uncritically take something that comes through the conspiracy or truther or mystical or new age kind of conduit, and who's going to uncritically push forward with the bullshit. What is this claim built on? What scholarly research? None was forthcoming. This is a literal book with tons of citations, done in a scholarly manner. Which do you trust, a viral video or a book? And I'm not saying that just because Bibbo is a friend and because that's what the angels told me. I'm saying if this was something that's been known for so long, why weren't you guys talking about it a year ago, 2 years ago? Bibbo talked about this in 2012, right? If you go back on my channel, I've been talking about the end of the Kali Yuga in 2025 since at the absolute latest 2022, but I think 2021 I did videos on it. I know that's when I got that information. And so the point is that Mockingbird, which took over the media in the US, the CIA project, it long since took the legacy media over. Duh, everybody knows that. It also has taken over a lot of like kind of the centralized hubs on the internet, you know, Google News, MSN News, of course, that's bad news, but also HuffPo and Vice, and there's a million other, like Atlantic, there's a million other ones that some of them have a, you know, also have magazines for boomers and whatever, like the Atlantic or whatever, you know, and some of them are just legacy media online, New York Times, stuff like that. But there's a whole host of like kind of first to come out, first movers, very centralized media sources on the internet. And those, of course, are now all controlled. If they ever weren't, they are now, right? Like Vice might have been at one point in time reasonable, but now it's definitely controlled. What's that one that, what's his name down there in Brazil that he was on? The Intercept, you know, like the Intercept has probably always been bad, but it used to have some integrity when Glenn Greenwald was there. and now it's just that billionaire runs it, and it's vile. So that's another like controlled opposition outpost. Rolling Stone, obviously that's legacy media. So if you're trying to control the narrative, what does that leave? That leaves the influencer and truther community and people like myself, but probably they don't really care except for people who have bigger platforms, right? But they try and squelch the growth of anyone who doesn't do that, and they goose the growth of people who are disinfo agents, and they make sure that their information gets in front of everyone. They make sure that everybody knows and hears about and has shoved down their throat flat earth if they're in the truth community and some of these other BS fake conspiracies. And what they do is they look for who's discerning and who's not. And people who are not very discerning, they'll boost them. They'll boost those people who repeat their false narratives because that amplifies their signal, right? Whereas people like this channel, and there's millions of other channels that are far better than mine, Daniel List, right? Dark Journalist. He has a ton of subscribers, but he's definitely been suppressed. Joseph Rell, there's tons of people who are way better than me. They're thwarted by the media apparatus at every turn. And so in order to take over this space, they have to have plans. And then they also do things like, let's say you have a small channel, you're one of the first people to take this false Tartaria thing and you start talking about it, and pretty soon your channel's blown up, and now you're having conferences and you're making a lot of money now, right? You're getting a lot of exposure. Well, they don't need to have a CIA handler. They can just let natural human instincts take over, that people are going to protect their livelihood. Once they're making money doing it, they're going to protect their livelihood. And now the CIA doesn't even have to cut the guy a check. Or they use bots to do audience capture, where everybody in the audience says, oh, if you don't believe in flat earth anymore, bro, I'm just going to have to unsubscribe. You gotta believe in flat earth, bro, or else I'm going to unsubscribe. Or they push in the comments, disinfo agents. Have you seen what Sasha Stone said? Have you seen what this, man, it's biting my tongue. I know that that's a major intelligence operation, and I so want to blow this person up because it's so obvious to me that they're a con man. But there's this other huge disinfo agent, and there's lots of them. Corey Good, right? Corey Good. And then there's people who were reasonable at one point, but something happened and now they're off, like Santos Bonacci. He used to be awesome back in the day, but now he's off talking about flat earth all the time as an astrologer. It makes no sense, right? It's insane. And so there's people that got turned too. Either they were bribed or threatened or both. I do wonder, someone mentioned Cliff High earlier. I do wonder about Cliff High. He's been very unhinged and angry and says lots of bullshit now. He used to not say anything like the kind of amount of bullshit he says now. I like Cliff High and I don't want him to be that way, but he sure has been pushing the Khazarian Mafia thing a lot. And I don't know. I don't like to see it because it's leading to anti-Jewish stuff, regardless of anything else, like whether that's his intent or not, I don't know. I find it hard to believe he wouldn't know about the nation of black nobility if I do. He's much smarter than me, you know? So yeah, there's a lot of disinfo out there. And that's part of that thing that astrologer at their beginning, that Astrology with Jamie lady, you know, she was talking about like this Neptune in the final degrees of Pisces. When a planet enters a final degree, it tends to have this huge karmic eruption, especially for the slower moving outer planets. So like Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. And so whenever they're in that final degree, you can expect like real fireworks. And we have Pluto tomorrow moving into Aquarius. Now it's going to retrograde back. And it's interesting because it won't move fully into Aquarius, which is power to the people, until a few days after the election this fall. Very interesting. It retrogrades right before the election and then moves back through Capricorn. And so that's when I think the true last gasp of the Malachians will be. And then the minute Pluto moves into Aquarius, and in many ways Aquarius is like the sign of Lucifer. It's anti-authoritarian, right? Like telling God, no, I'm going to do my own thing. It's revolutionary. It fights the power. It's very technological. It's very forward thinking. It's very intellectual and cerebral. In many ways, it's the most Luciferian of any of the signs. I'm not saying that people who are Aquarius are Luciferian. I'm talking about the what do you call that thing? The archetype of the sign, right? So yeah, that is going to be, as my voice is giving out and I haven't even touched these questions, that is going to be the intro. And so I'm going to take a quick 5-minute break. And then on the other side, we're going to have Q&A, and any Q&A where, any questions I'll answer if I can. But super chats are given a priority. So if you want to donate to the channel, awesome. Also, I'm going to real quick just say that there is, I got to pull it up. For those who are interested, there's an angelic magic class that I am closing the registration for tonight. And so this is literally the last chance. It's next Thursday, the 25th of January. And a lot of people have said that it is a life-changing class that has greatly improved their life in all kinds of ways. It basically puts you in greater alignment with natural law, which in turn then helps attract you more abundance. It helps attract you more harmony in your life and more, peace, harmony, and like just other good things flow with it. And so this is the class, and you can just go to whitelotusoflight.com consultations if you're interested and sign up. I think I have one slot for Australians, Oceania people, so Australia, Asia time zone. And it's 4:30 p.m. AEDT on the 25th. And then the US class is January 25th at 6 p.m. So for me, the Australia class is on a Wednesday and the US class is on a Thursday. But if you're in Australia, it's Thursday, the 25th for you. And same thing if you're in the US. So there's, I think, 1 or 2 slots left in the US class and maybe 1 slot left in Australia, Oceania. All right, I'm going to pull up the break screen. I'm going to go take a quick short break. And then when we come back, we will hit that Q&A. And hopefully my voice will rally here a bit because it's kind of, it's not doing the best. Where's my break screen? There it is. Awesome. Okay, so I got to go here. Apologies, folks. Just a second. And then presents. Where is the break screen? There it is. Okay. All right. I'll see you guys in 3 to 5 minutes. And I'm going to real quick mute myself to boot. All righty, and we are back, and we are going to get to some Q&A. I did do the sad trumpet noise because I found I'm down to my last LaCroix. We've been snowed in here and haven't been able to get to the store yet. I was going to do it today and just ended up ordering food in because as I said at the beginning of the show, I have the time management skills of a mosquito that's eaten too many lead paint chips and huffed way too much paint. Like, my time management skills are next level bad. I don't mean to, I sincerely don't, but I always am running behind on everything. It really sucks, and it's frustrating. It's me. It's one of those Pluto patterns I need to get rid of. Okay, so let's get to these questions. We already answered Giddy Up Mofo's question, which, yeah, it's 484, and then, yeah, you can, I will send the pages of the book that are needed for the beginning of the class. I can even do it for a later class as well if truly necessary for someone. See, fly over me. So and by the way, fly over me, I noticed you put a lot of questions in here, and I may not be able to hit all of them in the interest of I want to hit over other people's questions as well. So you were actually who I was talking about when I said there was a lot of questions in the chat from a single person. But I will answer this. So would I be correct in assuming that the Luciferians are the Jesuits and the people that follow Moloch are the Jewish families that fled or came and became the Rothschild family? No, you would be wildly incorrect about that, not to be rude. But I mean, I'm sure there are some Luciferians in the Jesuit order, and certainly there are, the Rothschilds or Molochian. But no, they're not. The Molochians are Babylon. I mean, they're really, I guess you would say, Iraqi, but they haven't lived in Iraq for a long, long time. Most of them. The most recent ones that were there were the Rodanites, and they were driven out by, and they later pretended to be Jewish. But the Rodanites were driven out actually by the Ottoman Turks when they took over Constantinople and turned it into Istanbul, not Constantinople, and they then went down to basically Babylon and drove out the Rodanites, who were still kind of there in what was left of the city of Babylon in that general area. And the Ottomans drove them out. It was actually a series of emperors called the Aslans, which is where C.S. Lewis gets that, or sultans rather, which is where C.S. Lewis gets that the name Aslan from, actually. And so, yes, the Rothschilds themselves are, but as I say often on this channel, the Jewish layer is just an administrative layer. Yeah, some of the Rodanites claim to be Jewish. Most of the black nobility people have claimed historically to be Christian, actually, and they went from Babylon. I believe they actually probably started in Acadia. They went from Acadia and maybe even Samaria. The angels have also told me recently in that channeling that some significant important ones came from the Chaldeans, which is the same general area, Turkey, Iraq kind of area. It's the oldest part of civilization, right? But so they started out in Acadia, it seems, based on linguistic clues, went to Babylon. That's where they really got into dark sorcery. That's when they first broke the spirit of the Jewish people. Abraham enslaved them, horrible, evil, and then released them. And then they did have a lot to do with things like the Babylonian Talmud, these black sorcerers. And to some extent, like all three of the Abrahamic faiths, to some extent, they all have spiritual value. There's wonderful things in all three of them, but to some extent, they're all mind control programs, the way they've been edited into their current form. They're mind control programs. And I mean, did I really need to tell you that? When you look around at these different groups, like, are they not behaving in all three cases like pretty wild? Christians being by far the most reasonable three right now, but that has not always been true. Christians were some of the most unhinged for many, many, many centuries. So all three of those are very, and especially the Babylonian Talmud has those roots to where they bring stuff over. I mean, even elements of the Torah or the Bible are, Sumerian and Babylonian creation myths that basically Abraham and his people overheard while they were in captivity in Babylon. And even the restarting after the captivity, certain things point to it. But linguistically, that group then goes from Babylon to Tyre and actually was in direct opposition to the Jews, interestingly enough, right? During the time of David, his great enemy were the Canaanites. which is the Canaanites or the Phoenicians in the city of Tyre, and that's where the black nobility is from. They're from the people who died, who made the purple dye and became very wealthy on that in Tyre, and that they also, I think, did some limited banking there. They certainly did banking back in Babylon. That's where banking was first created as we know it. Way before Abraham was born, they were doing banking and usury. So they can't be Jewish, right? They can't be Jewish because they were around before Judaism. Do some amount of them use a cloak of Judaism? Yes. Primarily, though, most of the Jewish families you've heard of and so forth, they're part of this administrative layer that comes in much later. It comes in when the Rodanites are working with the Khazarians to control the Silk Road. There's a period of time where that's happening. But again, you'll notice the Rodonite Babylonian dark sorcerers are pulling the puppet strings, actually, of the Khazarians up there on that Silk Road. Yes, I know the Khazarians then later convert to Judaism. You have then over in Tyre, long before that, you have these people who worship Moloch, right? And in the Bible, we see that Solomon marries a woman who is from Tyre and brings her back. And when he allows her to start putting up a temple to Moloch on the outskirts of town, that's when Solomon loses God's favor. That's when he has his downfall. And they talk extensively of all the horrible stuff they were doing. So Carthage is a colony of Tyre. And so Carthage had its big fight with the Roman Empire, got its ass handed to it. Tyre got destroyed by Alexander the Great, and the families, the wealthy families from both of those cities, they ended up going to Rome, right? Sometimes much, much later. In the case of Tyre, it was after the destruction, they would have gone to, actually, they probably were there at the time of when Rome was still a republic, and even a proto-republic. They moved there pretty early on, and I forget exactly when, but they moved there. They moved to Rome. They become imperial senators. Like, boy, I don't like to use their names. The Maximus clan. I can use a Roman historical clan that would later become a different modern family. But the Maximus senatorial family in Rome is one of the examples. They became fantastically wealthy as senators of Rome during the Roman Empire and all the looting and taxation and stuff that went on. And then when Rome was falling, some of them then moved over to the banks of the Rialto, to Venice. And it's in Venice where they took the name the Venetian Black Nobility, and it's there where they really went nuts because they started bankrupting Europe. And again, Khazaria is just a Khanate. Actually, the Venetians were bankrupting proto-nations in Europe before the founding of the Khazarian Khanate, let alone the mass conversion to Judaism that would happen much later, right? So we already see these people using banking and usury, and there's no Jewish element whatsoever here. None. They're pagan. They're Near East pagans. They worship ancient elder gods, specifically Moloch's the big one for them. So, and again, the game of Saturn, Mark Peter Adams, that's the smoking gun that proves the Moloch Venetian banker connection. I go into all this in great depth on the Venetian Black Nobility thing, so I'm not really going to spend any more time on this. But no, that's wrong. And the reason I say that with kind of like a is because this Jewish thing is like one of the things that I'm really sick of. And I even talk about how there's a magical egregore. There's a magical construct that gets people stuck on it. I got stuck on it myself. I got stuck in that layer myself for a long, long time. There's no shame in it, but that is not the final layer. That's just the administrative layer, and it's a firewall, and they want you to stop there. They don't want you to keep going. They don't want you to get to the root. And the root is these Babylonian dark sorcerers who invented banking. They invented banking before Abraham was born. They were doing banking and usury. At Cliff High, don't freak out. Hyper novelty warning. Okay. Did you see this Cliff High, don't freak out, hyper novelty warning? Remember back in the day, I was letting you know, I think it's okay about the ancient Roman Empire. It was an energy intrusion thing. Strange energies from space, making about their minds. Now we have some people who are experiencing this new current wave of strange energies. This is a very long comment that just keeps going on and on and on and on. Yeah, well, I just answered a question of yours, so I'm just going to skip to the next one. I'll come back to this if there's time at the end. because it's at several things in a row, and I don't want to read all that. I want to get to other people as well, especially since there's even more. What angel is best for activation of psychic abilities? Well, there's a specific one of the 72 named angels, but in order to work with that angel, you have to work through Archangel Raziel. And I mean, this is literally what I teach people. Hang on just a second. Let's see here. I need to open up the document. I'm gonna give you the name of the angel of the 72 named Shem angels, and you may very well be able to find the Shem talisman and all the rest of the pieces you need online. But hang on just a second. Let's see. Angelic powers. Okay, just a second. Sorry, I'm looking at the answer to your question. Okay, so it's Yeyizel. So it's Yeyizel. Grants the power to improve psychic ability. You are going to probably struggle to call upon that angel without going through a proper, gosh, I got to open my streamer. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Without going through a proper ritual like the ones that I teach in the class. But you can look up Solomonic Magic, Shem Talisman, Shem Angels, and Yeyizel, and maybe learn how to do it on your own. But also Archangel Raziel would be able to help with that. And Raziel you can call upon directly, although Raziel, unless you have an established relationship with him, you usually have to move through his aspect known as Arzel, which is an angel that's closer to us. And when you do the ritual that I teach, you have to call to Arzel, and there's a specific passage of Psalms you have to recite, and there's a whole elaborate process. It's not one I came up with. It's a very old process, and that's a big part of why it's so effective. But Raziel and Yeyizel, Yeyizel. So that's much I give. Whoa. Yeah, okay. Fly over me. That was a very long comment because it even continued beyond that. Harv Harry from Amsterdam. Good to see you, brother. Alex, good to see you, brother. Awesome. I'm looking forward to it as well, brother. This is exciting. I'm really glad that Australian Oceania classes, there's at least 3 of you in it, and there might even be the full 4 already, which would be fantastic. I would love that. The classes work best at 4. I've done it with 5. That's too many. I've done it with smaller groups, including 101, and those are fine, but a lot of the value people get from the class, I feel like, is the questions of the various students are great. Speaking of students, here's a former student, Clint. Will we hear more of the prophecy of the virtues? Yeah, I answered this earlier. Sorry, I don't mean to be a tease about that. I definitely will do it. I'm very distractible. I am in the middle of several books. I watch and read a lot of stuff. I work a lot. Not just on this channel, something I do very much on the side. This channel, from an economic point of view, for what it does is exactly what happened with Giddy Up Mofo, is that a certain amount of people come for my spiritual services because they feel resonance with me and what I share on the channel. But the channel itself gives me, I don't know, I've made maybe 4 cents an hour on my time on YouTube. I'm not kidding. I've made so little and it's laughable, maybe $300, and I've spent thousands of hours on research and editing and filming. So it's kind of laughable, but I will definitely get to this. The point of that story is, as you can see, I'm distractible and tangential, and I have to listen to that virtues prophecy again, and then I have to give sort of the filtered version because some of it was meant for me. It's great to see you, brother Brent. Brent is working on a new intro for the channel, actually, which is awesome. He's super awesome, and he's also a former student. Look Within, how's it going? And then a Giga Chad has entered the chat, and half the ladies in the chat are now pregnant just from him entering the chat. I'm just kidding. I answered this earlier, but I'll go ahead and answer it again. 100% confident that it will happen. Less confident in the timing, other than to say that unless the angels are totally wrong, which I really hope that's not the case, but unless the angels are totally wrong, it seems like most all of them will be arrested by 2027, 2028. A lot of them will be tried. Some of them will be, will die in the struggle, or they'll say, oops, they died in the struggle, but maybe they were too dangerous to keep alive because they'd implicate some of the Luciferians and some of the nonsense the Luciferians have been up to, or they would somehow disrupt the Luciferian narrative, or they're just too dangerous to keep alive. Those people will resist arrest or whatever and just get summarily executed. But the ones they think will make for a good trial, those ones will be kept alive, and those ones will be in the trials that they'll have, which will be just like the first Nuremberg. It'll be a kangaroo court, and it's going to cover everything from, I think, speculative. This one's more speculative, but banking crimes. But I think that'll be one of the elements they go after. They're certainly going to hang all the pedos from that neck, because that's one of the things that separates Malachians from Luciferians. It's one of the things that gives the Malachians their power. And the Luciferians know both of those things. It gives them power both in the sense of political power with the blackmail shit like Epstein, right? But it also gives them magical power, because it helps to keep open the portals to the lower astral, including the portal to Moloch's realm, the lowest part of the lower astral. So all those people, one way or another, are going to be, maybe a tiny handful will escape into hiding, but the vast majority are going to be hunted down, wiped out, and arrested. And I also think there'll be trials for the pokey poke. That's going to be tricky for the Luciferians, because they were involved in every aspect of that. They might lean heavy on, oh, well, we couldn't stop it, but we put saline out, because they put saline out for sure. And the 17th letter of the alphabet guys talk about this, and they talked about this right away. The minute it went out, before it was even going out, they said white hats have put saline in. And then there was tons of reports in the media for this 3-week window, and then all those reports got cleansed. That was creepy. There was all these reports of people getting angry because they would crack open vials, and they would find out that somehow that the vials were just saline, right? That they paid for. And the funny thing is, these pharmacies were complaining that they didn't get the deadly actual vaccine. Instead, they got saline. And then that was covered up and hushed up. That was one of the better examples of control of the narrative. And it might have even been the Luciferians helped cover that up, because for some reason they don't want to release that. They didn't want to release that information quite yet. Or maybe they thought that would tip their hand to the Malachians, perhaps. But the flip side of that is it was in those early 17th letter of the alphabet things. They were saying that there's going to be saline in it, and there definitely was. And so the Luciferians have to be careful, because the pokey poke that could fry them. So could certain financial crimes that they are also involved in could fry them. So they're going to have to figure out how can they create a narrative that cooks all these Malachians and leaves them untouched. And an easy slam dunk for them is the pedo stuff. So I'm not talking about, I want to be clear, when I say pedo stuff, I could see it come out, for example, that Trump had been with a 16-year-old girl. I could see that, right? But Trump with a 6-year-old, no, zero chance of that. I just don't believe that. But a teenage girl, so underage in the U.S., but perhaps legal because you were in Europe at the time, where the age of consent in a lot of places like Spain, I think, is like 14 or something. So there's plenty of places in Europe where a man Trump's age could have sex with a 16-year-old girl, and it would actually technically be legal in that country. Certain countries in Asia are that way. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying that, we do kind of we actually have one of the highest ages of consent of anywhere in the world in the U.S. at generally speaking 18. And I'm not saying we should roll that back or anything. I'm just saying there's a huge, gigantic difference in my mind between a teenage girl and a little tiny child. Both of them are wrong, but one of them is pedophilia and the other one is just lame and gross, and like illegal if it's between 16 and 17. I'm a little more forgiving of that. I don't have my hang and judge attitude about that the way I do about the harm of kids, just because that just hasn't historically been true until very recently. I mean, even in my lifetime, and this was correct, they've raised the age of consent in a number of states, because a lot of the states it was really low. I think there still might be some states that are under 18 even in the US. So something like that I could see, but Harm of children, no. And so that's a slam dunk for the Malachians. There's no, I mean, for the Luciferians on the Malachians. It's a no-brainer for them. That's definitely going to be one of their major vectors of attack, because they can get almost all the truly dangerous ones by just pulling that single thread. So I'm 100% confident. The exact timing, I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong. I certainly hope not. That has grave implications, but I don't believe that I am. Trudeau went to Bariloche after being elected in 2015. Oh, very well done. San Carlos de Bariloche, by the way, is down there in Argentina, and is definitely a Nazi hideout. Definitely was where it seems Bormann was after the war, which is Bormann was the mastermind who moved the Nazis into the post-war Nazi International, and Bormann was down there in San Carlos de Bariloche, it seems. So yeah, incredible. Brenton says, yes, it was transformative. Buckle up. Yeah. You're probably talking about the they're probably talking about the something I was saying about the astrology at the beginning. All right. Flat Earth, the question mark. This guy is Guy. I am Guy. Oh. Yeah. Okay, well, that guy might not be worth reading. In a previous video, you said, if one does angel magic, they will reincarnate. This is correct. I've always been drawn to the angels, but don't want to come back here. Well, believe me, I understand that. It makes it much more likely that you will reincarnate here, because there's a very heavy dose of karma attached to magic, because you are stepping into you're stepping into a beyond normal human level of responsibility for creation. And by doing that, it creates karma. So it could be good karma if you're doing white magic, but then you reincarnate here with good karma, or it could be black magic, in which case it's horrific karma, and it'd be much better for you to shoot someone than to, if you even had the karmic right, which is doubtful, to kill someone with black magic. If you killed someone with black magic, it would be better to have, it's far worse to do black magic to kill someone than to just like shoot someone with a gun. Magic just has a tremendous amount of karmic, it just ties you more tight, it binds you more tightly to the wheel of samsara. You're also kind of invested in the illusion to some degree when you do that. If your goal is to avoid reincarnation, again, Advaita Vedanta to me is the purest teaching out there, because someone who is an absolute master, Ramana Maharshi, has been alive as recently as, I think he died in 1945 or 48 or something like that. So we have recordings of him, and we have his exact words, and he is no doubt about it enlightened. There's a living man in Portugal, David Waldman, Devajii, Devajii. I believe that man is enlightened. If you're looking to escape the cycle of death and rebirth, then Buddhism or Advaita Vedanta. You can also look at Adyashanti, is another excellent teacher. So yeah, as far as being drawn to the angels, that's awesome. And keep in mind that reincarnating could mean reincarnating. Reincarnation isn't always linear. More than likely, if you're alive right now and you reincarnate here, you're either, probably nobody watching this video, but in rare, for people who aren't awakened or they don't pass certain tests, they might reincarnate in the Kali Yuga. But probably most people who watch this channel will be people who make it through to the Dwapara Yuga. I just say that because it just, from a point of view of like attracts like, the Hermetic principle, it means that you're vibrating at a higher level because you're attracted to the content. Because so much of the content isn't me, it's like some amount of it, the most important stuff on this channel is a divine message, in my opinion, that comes from the angels. And I get that that's not everybody's cup of tea, and people don't have to believe me if they don't want to. That part of things is very important. And if you're attracted to that energy, in my opinion, you're more likely to reincarnate in the Dwapara Yuga. If someone has extraordinary karma, they might even reincarnate in the Silver or Golden Age. It is possible. We don't reincarnate in a linear fashion. If you're a bad Malachian right now, unless you're among the worst of the worst, like those ruling Babylonian sorcerer families, unless you're in those families, if you're just a Malachian person, you're probably going to reincarnate Malachian consciousness. You're probably going to reincarnate in the Kali Yuga, either back in time in our Kali Yuga or in a future Kali Yuga, whatever that looks like, or even a past Kali Yuga, because you need to learn Kali Yuga lessons. So it's up to you whether that's appealing. To me, I'm willing to take on that karma to help people write down during this critical time, but that's not everyone's cup of tea, and I respect that. Yeah, no kidding. Oh my God, this guy isn't. I'm just gonna go ahead and yeah, I'm just gonna get rid of this guy because he insulted me. I don't care if people want to talk about even though they're apparently not able to do a minuscule amount of research and realize that building those cathedrals is not only possible but extremely well documented. There's a million books on how they did it. We know how they did it because they took meticulous records that still exist. Yeah, they used old school technology, and it took them like 300 years to build it, bro. And back then, people were willing to do that. No one talks about the Chinese showing up in Europe in 1421 per Charles C. Mann. Interesting. I have not heard that. Very interesting. I've never heard that. So that was somewhat in the same time frame ish, I think. Oh no, maybe Marco Polo was more like the 1200s. Interesting. I believe that the Chinese treasure fleet made it to the west coast of the U.S. I mean, we basically have proof at this point. They have like Ming Dynasty vases they found on the west coast. So quit making so much sense. Okay, this is supposed to be a conspiracy channel. Yeah, sorry about that. Liquid then. Nice. Thank you so much, everybody who kind of like came to my defense. Like, I obviously didn't see this in real time, and yeah, so I really appreciate that, because that's one of the things I've been working through is like those kind of like hater comments. Ones like that don't bother me so much. Sometimes people say stuff that make me second guess myself, and I talked about this. I don't know if it's in one of the ones that has come out yet, or whether I've said this, but the other day I was super uncomfortable because of talking about that one person who I was talking with a commenter on the channel about that one person who I believe is a disinfo agent, which again, they seem to be part of an active operation. So I'm leery of trying to bust up or directly challenge an active intelligence operation. So that guy, someone was pushing on my channel. I saw that guy pushed on a million different channels, and I had so many people try and push that guy on me, right? And I was like, why does everybody keep talking about this guy everywhere? What's so amazing about him? And it took about 5 minutes of watching it, and I just have, partly because I was abused when I was a kid, I have a super good radar for bullshit artists and con artists and people who are just damaging and negative. And so that guy sent up my antenna in a big, big way. And then I did more research and found out more about him. And I was like, oh yeah, this guy's 100% a con man. I just don't even have a shadow of doubt. And so I was having this commenter go off of me, and I really had to think about it there. It's like, am I jealous of this guy because his channel is so much bigger? Am I jealous of this guy because he claims to be so well-read? He's much better well-read than me. Well, actually, I don't want to say that because that definitely gives away their identity. You know, I was like, is it like, what is it about this guy? And then I was like, no, like Daniel List has 100 times or 1,000 times the size of my channel. And he's way better, more well-read than me. That doesn't bother me. Bibodev Mizra is clearly way more knowledgeable than I am. Dr. Joseph Frill, Catherine Austin Fitz. I started rattling off dozens of people, and I was like, no. But what it made me realize is that I had to be in that state, which is very uncomfortable, self-reflecting, being like, am I wrong here about this guy? Am I just like, maybe I'm not giving him a fair shake, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm coming from like a more limited place and some kind of like negative thing, you know? And I realized that this other person I knew, who was this tremendous spiritual teacher, he always, he used to be amazing, and he had almost no ego when I first met him. And then he blew up in popularity and money. And like, he's been on Oprah now, and he's a millionaire, 10 millionaire, right? decimillionaire or whatever. And I knew him back when he would get like 12 people. And me and my ex-wife helped build up his brand in an important way and helped them a lot, and never got paid a dime. And anyways, like his ego blew up, and he started to say stuff like, I no longer have any blind spots. And I was like, wait, what did you say? I have now completely removed all blind spots, and I have total self-knowledge. And I was like, just even the way you're saying that doesn't sound right. And previously he had said things and he had been very humble and but he was now saying, I'm beyond blind spots. And I was like, I don't feel like someone who was at that state would need to say it, right? Like, why would they need to say it? I have blind spots. I know I have blind spots. And so one of the things that hit me the other day is that it's really important to always be self-reflective and turn on yourself. And that's very uncomfortable. And so a lot of people who get famous and blow up and whatever, they will succumb to not actually that they really believe that they're so great at first, but it's just that they want to stop believing that maybe they're not. Maybe there's flaws with them. Maybe they're making mistakes. And then you lose that humility, and then you lose that authenticity, and you start to get high on your own ego supply, and it becomes a negative feedback loop. But it's hard to stay in that uncomfortable space of like being self-reflecting. And so anyways, thanks for all the people who jumped in. Yeah. The dude with the ponytail, not sure who you're referring to. Let's see what Relic said. Yeah. There is interesting data. Tartaria, I think, is much like the same way that flat Earth may be covering up honeycomb, certainly honeycomb or possibly even full-blown hollow Earth. Tartaria may be a distraction from something like there's some kind of, like, I don't know what it is, something about those world fairs makes me raise an eyebrow. Like some of the building stuff is like very intriguing. The Star Forts thing, like what the hell is that about? Like where did those come from? And like why were they still building them at some point? Like there's something there. I don't know. Like, of course, like any good lie, you need to sprinkle some truth in there, or else it doesn't jive. One of the things I'm open to is that it's possible that the Earth and or moon, especially the moon, may be a different size or different distance than we're told. And same thing possibly with the sun, not so much size, but distance, right? I've heard people claim that has been changed over time. It could be we have more accurate measurements now, and that it's changed in the same way. I discovered, talking to Bibidev Mizra, that my recollection was that we were on an outer spiral arm, but that apparently is old information, and now we're known to be more in the kind of the center point between the outermost part of the galaxy and the innermost part of the galaxy. And so we're more at a midway point, and that was not my understanding. And so sometimes not the science changes, but our ability to make observations accurately changes, and that can happen. And I'm open to, to give the flat Earth people like some something here. I'm open to that the Earth might be a different size than we've been told. I'm not certain about that. That I could believe. The shape, no. Just based on that motion of the heavens and all the stuff I was talking about, no, absolutely not. So again, another example is they say in the viruses aren't real group, they say, well, let's see, what's one of the things they say that, oh yeah, so I could see that viruses have been hyped up in certain cases in order to push vaccines, or that we've been lied to about certain aspects of viruses. Not the general thing, but like there have been instances where there's been a lot of lying in the medical field, clearly, especially since the Rockefellers got in there in the 1920s or whatever. And so that's true, but claiming that viruses aren't real at all or do no harm, that's just like a bridge too far for me, because I've known people who worked in virology labs. So, and they had zero reason to lie to me. One of them was my very best friend at the time. Our friend has ended because of political stuff, but we were super, super close. He had no reason to lie to me. I had no reason to believe him. He felt actually guilty about his work, so he talked to me about his work a lot, because a lot of times the mice would die, and that bothered him, because he was I mean, he's got some anger issues, but he's a good man. I sometimes am sad about that. Friendship's been dead for a long time now, but I miss that guy sometimes. So, yeah, I mean, like in all these cases, like there's some nuggets of truth, or else it just can't get any traction. Absolutely, yeah. They treat it like a religion, and that's pushed because it's pushed top down from an intelligence thing. And one of the things is you can question the mainstream all you want, but don't question flat Earth. Don't question Tartaria. If you question it, blah blah. Wow, that's a fantastic question. Wow, I'm like really trying to. Oh well. Okay, so literally, I think Archangel Raziel. Yeah, it was Archangel Raziel. I just wasn't sure who it was for a second. Is saying that Archangel Raphael is best for what you're asking, which I'm not sure why that is. That is a pure intuitive like hit or gnosis from the angels just now. I can't. The one I said earlier, Yeziel, that's a different thing. That's a very quantified thing with the Shem angels. I don't know. That's interesting. Raphael is the archangel of healing, and so healing to some degree is I could see as dissolving of karma and the ego, perhaps. Pharrell touching on the rights of transgender and tying it to robotic rights is interesting. Oh yeah. Oh, Dr. Pharrell's fucking incredible. Everything he says is amazing. Like I said, he brings valuable data to the table, but I disagree with his overall thesis. Longo's great data, but I see dude's ego when others give their perspective. Yeah, I'm not sure of who that Longo person is. I don't much care about the shape of the Earth more than stationary or traveling. 4.5 billion miles per year thing and how they measure that. Yeah, it's an interesting point. The destination, if there is one, is more important than the vehicle. Well, I mean, we're going around the central galactic sun, and Bibodev Mizra is going to talk about this more in part 2 of that interview. But actually, we're going to get hit with a blast of light from that galactic nucleus when it goes into active mode. And that's what's going to shift consciousness, in his opinion, which is very similar to what Peter Shampoo also said on this channel about the plasma undulation. And so it makes a lot of sense to me. The universe is electromagnetic. That's another thing they use. I have seen people wed electric universe theory, which I believe is actually the correct model, as opposed to the Einsteinian relativistic model. I think the electric universe model is actually more accurate. And that is an example of a very large-scale deception. But there was a lot of people who said that Einstein was full of it at the time. There was actually like a letter signed by 100 physicists that said he was wrong. They claim that they've since verified it, but I don't know. I find ever since they moved away from experimental physics into theoretical physics, I think that we can be dubious of that. And there's a lot of interviews. Unfortunately, the guy's dead now. I think his name was Wade Thornhill. He was interviewed on Forum Borealis, and I highly recommend that if you're interested in the electric universe model. Are you there, Sydney? Not sure what that is. I struggle with the time myself. Yes, me too. Do you think Dr. Dahesh was tied to the Black nobility and had a purposeful connection in the Reformation of the Middle East? That's really interesting. I'm not sure who Dr. Dahesh is. I probably sound pretty ignorant saying that. Is he related to something to do with like the British partitioning of, what was basically had previously been Ottoman territory, like when they created the Palestinian state and the House of Saud and all that? I pardon my ignorance. This example, see, I get stumped or I don't know things. I don't know who that is. So you'd have to clarify that, and then I could answer more. I guess my answer is I don't know, because I don't know who that is. What's your take on Joseph Smith and Mormonism? Gosh, people on this channel are just trying to get a fatwa issued against me by every religion on the planet with my heretical views. I mean, he was a Mason. There's a lot of Masonic symbolism in Mormonism. It seems to me, to some degree, that Mormonism is some kind of offshoot of Masonry. I think there's a lot of excellent human beings who are Mormon. I've been friends with tons of people who are usually admittedly ex-Mormons, but they even say that they like some of the like extreme family value stuff in Mormonism. And I think, that there's super good people in the Mormon church. There's also some people that are extremely shady and nasty, but there's a lot of like really good people. Like most Mormons I've met have been pretty good people. So if you got to watch out for those hot blonde girls in high school that will recruit your son or tried to recruit me to Mormonism when I was young, this girl, like, I thought she wanted to date me, and then I wouldn't go to church with her, and then she wouldn't talk to me anymore, and she turned her attention to all my friends, and she managed to convert two of my friends to Mormonism in high school, this cute blonde girl, and neither one of them ended up dating her. She lured him in. She lured him in with her cute hotness, and her sole goal was like, I don't know if someone put her up to it, but she was all about recruiting guys to become Mormon, but she would pretend like she was interested in them. She tried it with me, and I was like, no, I'm not becoming Mormon. I was Catholic, for God's sake. I've had enough of religion. Thanks. Let's see. What up is? Hey, Diana, great to see you. I hope Brad is doing well. Meant to say, what's up, Ian? Hey, how's it going, Diana? Good to see you. Yeah, because they forced it open. There was a method that a black magician was explaining to me that they used where they used like a psychic drill to drill and force open someone's third eye, which is basically like raping your third eye energetically. That's why the demons are much faster at manifestation, at least during the Kali Yuga, certainly, but maybe they always are. I suspect they always are. They don't veto things the way angels do. There's a reason why people go for demonic magic. If you're just looking for results and you don't care what happens to your soul and you don't care what backlash that might have on even people you love who are around you, then demonic magic is very potent and powerful. It's real. It's real. There's a lot of information out there. A lot of it's wrong, but a lot of it will bring demons into your life, but that'll increase chaos and you'll reincarnate and it'll be bad. Is Jesus higher than all the angels? Well, I mean, he's a deity at this point, right? I mean, he's a major earthly deity at this point. When he was a man, was he? I don't know. But he's since become a deity. So yes, now he's different though. Angels aren't. Well, I mean, I don't know. The angels revealed something to me recently that maybe they are. It doesn't seem that, generally speaking, the angels. Maybe they are. Angels are just on a different. I think they're just on a different evolutionary path. Jesus went he was probably an avatar, and then that incarnation, created a soul blueprint or like an Atman for that incarnation, which then, if you believe he was like a solar avatar, which is what a lot of esotericists say, so then he's a solar avatar that probably creates an Atman. In order to create a body, you have to have an Atman, you have to have a soul in place, and that soul was probably ultra powerful, obviously, and became immediately a demigod, was basically a demigod while he was alive. He had vast magical powers. He was a human being who perfected himself to a tremendous degree and had vast magical and yogic powers, that he had learned in India and Pakistan and Egypt. And he did all sorts of white magic, and he helped a tremendous amount of people. He's arguably the greatest emissary of all time of the Most High. He was a demigod basically while he was alive, and then was certainly a demigod after his death. And then now he's a deity. He's now a deity. He is on par with all these other great deities, and a tremendous amount of people focus their psychic energy on him. He is a truth path to salvation. Jesus is God. He is a God, but and that's where I would lose the Christians. But he's certainly a path to salvation. So yes, but Jesus doesn't tell the angels what to do. Jesus, you could also say Jesus isn't, you could say, this might be more accurate in a way, you could say Jesus is an aspect of the Most High. That's, you could say that. He's also his own thing too, sort of. So he was an emissary of the Most High and sort of an emanation of the Most High initially, but he's also sort of his own thing at this point. And to my knowledge, he's not who directs the angels. It's the same person that Jesus called my Father or the Most High. He did also refer to that being as the Most High, which is why I use that term, because Jesus used that term. So, and it's not Jehovah and it's not Yahweh. It's a different being. And so, to my knowledge, Jesus does not direct the angels. I will invoke Jesus when I do a variety of different things. I love Jesus. I'm a Jesus guy, as a friend of mine says, but I'm not a Christian. I don't see Jesus as the sole path to salvation. I think there's other ways that you can connect with the Most High, and also that you can do things like Advaita Vedanta or Buddhism and become enlightened. That's not the same thing, but it's certainly a viable spiritual route that I support and applaud either one of those. Yeah, no, I don't disagree. That wasn't my point earlier. I was just trying to tease out, like, I wouldn't be surprised if Trump or some of these other people had maybe been with a teen girl who was slightly underage, which would have been legal in other countries. But that just doesn't have the same flavor as like a pre-menstrual girl or a little boy, right? A pre-adult hormone, prepubescent. That's the term I want. Prepubescent children are just it's very different than a post-pubescent young female or young male. It's not the same. And I just don't think you can call someone who slept with a 17 and 364-day-year-old a pedophile in the same way you could call someone who went after a 5-year-old, right? It's not the same. Like, one is not cool and bad, right? Going back to what Juju said, but it's also like it's the way humanity was for all of time until about 70, 80 years ago. And now it's more important than ever because our adults take longer to mature nowadays. That's just a fact. So moving the age of consent up actually makes sense with our super complex culture. And I certainly support it. And, my son's 15. And if some 50-year-old woman slept with my son, I would be filled with rage, but I wouldn't feel the same way as if that same 50-year-old woman had molested my son when he was 8. It's just very different to my mind anyway, and people are welcome to disagree with that. I realize that's a kind of hot take point of view. Hey, thank you so much, Garrett Mack. That's wonderful, and I'm glad you can catch it live as well. And thank you, Chad. You are a Giga Chad of a Chad lad. Flower me $4 super sticker. Thank you so much, brother. Appreciate it. I'll go back and I'll read your stuff here. Let me get caught up with the more recent questions. So I'll go back and read your thing. Sorry, it was just a very long thing about, I think about something Cliff High said, which is funny because then he talks about who's the most powerful angel? Is it more powerful than all the pagan gods? No. It really depends on which god and how many followers do they currently have. That's where gods derive a tremendous amount of their power. Also, how in alignment with the current yuga is that god's portfolio? So like dark gods of all stripes have been living large the past 6,000 years because we're in a lower vibration. And gods of a higher vibration have all been limited and restrained to some degree. But the primary thing that restrains deities, actually the show American Gods, what's his name, who does that American Gods comic and show and novel, I forget what his name is. He wrote Sandman too. That guy definitely knows a lot of occult shit. He basically has it right that gods require worshipers, and if they don't have it, that's like the weakness of deities. Demigods is a bit different. Demigods and kind of like ascended masters, they exist on this level, which is basically the same thing. They exist on this level, like Kuan Yin is a demigod. She's more than human. She's taken on quite a bit of power. She can do things in the astral realm. She's independent. She's non-corporeal and can influence the material world, but she isn't quite a full-blown deity the way, say, Thor is, or Loki, or whatever. The thing is the demigod's power is based on, to some degree, the amount of people who are interested in them, but it's also something they sort of develop. And eventually they develop enough power, apparently, and they become full-blown gods. Some demigods are incarnated people. You could argue that Elon Musk is a demigod, Donald Trump is a demigod, Klaus Schwab is a demigod, Bill Gates is a demigod. Certainly all the black nobility family members are demigods because they wield such enormous amounts of power over the rest of humanity. And in this case, I'm using the term demigod much in the way the Buddhists use it. The realm of the demigods, so like ultra powerful people. They exist here on Earth in parallel with us, but they live a very different life with a very different set of rules and mores and a very different set of etiquette and just very, very different from the rest of us. They're at a level of power that most of us cannot comprehend, and it's a completely different level of complexity, the world that they dwell in. And they pull the puppet strings of down below them because part of the way they gain power is by manipulating people down below. Some demigods are disincarnate, like Kuan Yin. And she's building her power basically through merit and helping people on Earth. And she's apparently on the cusp of becoming a deity. So I've been told. And again, this is Gnosis, take it or leave it. And so pagan gods is an umbrella term that includes everything from gods that are like basically in this like stasis or torpor. When they have no followers, they go into some kind of like deity coma, apparently. And they stay in that until eventually they'll spontaneously resurrect when usually one of their followers reincarnates and starts worshiping the archetype to some degree. Let me give you an example of a spontaneous resurrection of a deity. 30 years ago, I can pretty much promise there was nobody on Earth who worshipped the Egyptian god Kek, K-E-K, who is a frog god, who is a god of chaos and disease. And then one day on 4chan, someone put up the Pepe meme, right? The frog that everyone knows, right? That's often associated with Trump, right? And the first response, or the person who posted it themselves, I can't remember, they went Kek. Why? Were they invoking this ancient Egyptian god? They were subconsciously, possibly because they were a previous like priest of Kek or something like that, which when you look at the portfolio of that god, which in particular is chaos, and you look at 4chan and you look at what 4chan has done, you got to wonder if some of those guys aren't reincarnated Kekian priests. Regardless, they said Kek. Why? Because K-E-K is in Korean, LOL in English, laughing out loud. So they post a frog, they go LOL, but in Korean, because those guys were a bunch of Korean, Japanese and Korean anime nerds, and so they would say Kek because they hung out on like Korean anime forums to some degree, and they picked up that Koreans would say Kek, right? Because that is laughing out loud, but in Korean, I think the transliteration of that, I'm not exactly sure how that works. Regardless, that's why they said it. Little did they know, or maybe they did, but little did they know that there's an Egyptian god that's a frog, that's a god of chaos and disease. Now consider, within 4 years of Pepe's first appearance, we have massive chaos roil the United States like never before seen, basically since the election of Trump and since. And did we have any disease flowing through society, the other main power that Kek has? And now people are chanting his name all the time. And his icon and image is everywhere. And look at that frog. It's always going, it has this like mischievous, very naughty grin, and it always has kind of a slightly malevolent vibe to it to me. Even though sometimes I really like some of the Pepe memes, right? It has a slightly what do you call it? Sinister vibe to it, in my opinion. So no, it really depends on what pagan god you're talking about. And what's the most powerful angel? Well, I mean, I don't know. They do different things. I mean, the most powerful angels are the 7 seraphim, which are closest to the Most High, and they spend the vast majority of their time just praising and singing to the Most High. That's the highest level of angels that I've retained. Are you asking who's the most powerful, like of the 72 Shem angels? Again, they're all pretty similar. You could argue maybe Pa'iel just because of he can do anything and is very effective at it. If you're talking like archangels, I mean, that's again subjective. Like if you want a pep speech, Metatron will lift your vibration. You know, if you want to be more of a vessel for the message of the Most High, Metatron. If you want to be a great healer, Raphael. If you want to be very knowledgeable and maybe learn more about angelic magic, Raziel. If you want to protect the weak and defenseless and smite evil, Archangel Michael, or Archangel Samael does that to some degree, the Archangel of Mars. Maybe you want an angel that can help you be very austere and disciplined, and then you'd want Archangel Cassiel. So it really depends. They do very different things. The most powerful class of angels or choir of angels are the seraphim. And they're the 9th choir, and they're furthest in vibration from us. And they have the most powerful effects, but it takes the longest time to trickle down to the material realm of any of the angels. Whereas the 72 Shem angels create much more immediate effects because they're closer to us in vibration. Yes, it's unlikely. It takes tremendous merit, but yes. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. You have to have tremendous merit. No doubt about it. Much more likely to reincarnate in the Dwapara Yuga if you're a particularly good question. There you go. He answered your question early, Magnetic. Oh, not sure how I did that. This might be a bit controversial, but I'm curious, are men more capable of working with angels than women because men are more electric and fire energy and women are magnetic and water energy? Wow, that's a really interesting question. The vast majority of my students have been male. I actually have a lot of females in my current class. Probably the two most devoted, that's not the right word. The two most talented people I've ever met were a very unstable male. He's very unstable. He was very badly abused like me when he was a kid. I work with him often to try and help him. He just has had a very hard life, and I've tried very hard to help this gentleman. And we've made a fair amount of progress, but he also dabbled heavily in black magic, and that has really, really harmed him. He also unfortunately took the pokey, which that also has harmed him a great deal. But the other is a female, and she's incredibly, incredibly talented. And she's fairly feminine as well. And she's a friend of mine, and she's very young, and she's just phenomenally talented. And the main thing that allows you to go really far with angels is being able to communicate with them telepathically, which can be developed. I've honed it, but I had it to some degree naturally early on. I think a lot more people can do it than think so. It's just that they don't trust that when you communicate telepathically with the spirit, especially initially, it'll sound like your own thoughts, but just slightly different. And they'll usually be like, you can realize it's not your own thoughts by the particular turns of phrase they use. And just if you tune in, there's a different vibratory frequency. And if you tune in, it'll feel outside of yourself instead of emanating from inside of yourself. And there's a number of clues in order to know if you're talking to a spirit or just having an inner dialogue or whatever. But the more you hone the ability, the more you can kind of fine tune that radio dial, because again, we're a transceiver, right? We will transmit and receive messages. As you fine tune that, then you can hear them really, really well. She can just hear them, boom, automatic. So can that one gentleman I mentioned, but unfortunately, he's terribly unstable. So I haven't had a chance to really, I plan to teach her because I'm certain that she could learn all the way up to what I do. She just, her and I'm actually going to see her later this month for her birthday. Maybe that's more reason to go see her. I've been going back and forth on whether to go to it. Oh, wow, I just had a great idea. I can gift her the book and also well, anyways, I'm going to do that. So That's an interesting question. I don't know. By and large, men seem more attracted to it, but I don't think women are any less capable. The female students I've had, they've had change. They've had the kind of change in their life that they were seeking. So I don't know. I don't think so, though, just because of my one friend who's female, who's so gifted and can hear the angels so clearly. Yeah, I mean, it could be. I'm open to the solar micronova. I have heard of that person, and I found them to be authentic. I found them to be authentic and in integrity, but that doesn't mean we can't also disagree, right? But I didn't find that suspicious observer person to be anything other than, if I'm remembering the right person, there's so many people out there now, right? He seemed like he was a sincere seeker of the truth to me. So yeah, a solar micronova is one of the possibilities of how things happen. It could be there's a blast from the active galactic nucleus, and then that triggers a micronova in our sun, for example. That's one way that could occur. Micronovas or, the Taurid meteor stream are like the two main suspects for what has caused prior resets, or like yuga ending cataclysms. Well, I mean, I don't know. I definitely know that the angels have said at this point that billions, plural, will die. The opportunity to limit the number of deaths to hundreds of millions has passed, according to the angels, for what that's worth. I know there will be wars in certain parts of the world. I know that there will be probably periods of time that last perhaps multiple months where food is difficult to get. I'm of the opinion that most of those disruptions will be fairly temporary, because the Luciferians are not interested in losing any more people than they're already going to lose from the Malachian democide, pokey poke. They want to have a vibrant global culture that they control. They want to have a high-tech global society that they control. They do want the best and the brightest, because they are eugenical in mindset. And I don't agree with them on that. I think that some of the stuff they're doing is horrible. Like it seemed the more of the live vaccines were routed to the Midwest and South, and more of the saline was routed to the coast for eugenical reasons. I don't agree with them. I think that that's vile. But again, the Luciferians they're not our friends. They might be our friend in the sense of an enemy of our enemy is our friend, but they aren't to be. We shouldn't be like, oh yay, other than maybe cheering them on as they hang the pedos, right? Don't let the jerks bring you down. They're probably trying to lower your vibe. Archon minions targeting you. Yeah, it could really be that. Yeah, I like that. I love that, Juju Bear. Dr. Longo, ego definitely gets in his own way. I haven't heard of this person somehow. I'll have to check into it. Probably Raphael, since he's a healer. That would make sense. Yeah. But I love his research on the Moors. Do you mean possibly the Moors without an E, like as in the North African Moorish people, some of whom like came up on occasion up to even as far as the British Isles? You're talking about like basically the Almohad Empire? It's another term used for them, the North Africans who lived in Morocco, and then for a while there in Spain when the Caliphate was in Spain, or the Almohads were in Spain. One person told me that Archangel Michael is a dragon. Yeah, well, I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, dragons they do exist in multiple forms. One form of them is they are a class of nobility among certain earth elementals. Some of the nobility of earth elementals will take the form that our mind would register as a dragon. It seems, are other forms. I mean, again, people ask me all the time, well, how do you know the angels? How do you know you're not talking to demons or whatever? Well, the proof's in the pudding. Yeshua told us, Jesus told us, you should know them by the fruits. And I've been working for them for years. My life has become more harmonious. I've become a better person. I've become a better father. I've become a better son. I've become a better worker. I've become happier and more peaceful and more harmonious. I was able to end a 27, 28-year addiction to hardcore pornography. I've been able to be a much less angry person, all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, if they're somehow bad, well, continue to be bad, I guess, and make my life better and more harmonious and more loving, and make me a more loving and compassionate and charitable person. Electric Universe, Walt Thornhill, listen to him on Living 4D with Paul Chek podcast. So if Walt Thornhill might be the living guy. There was an Australian guy who died recently, and that's who I was actually talking about. That's the guy who I think is the super expert. The girl in the red dress, the Matrix reference there. Some Masonic optics is Longo, and he does push a lot of the mainstream truther theories to boost his algorithm. Just saying, he does have some interesting takes, but it's all in alignment. Cool, yeah, I'll maybe check him out at some point. I don't spend a ton of time listening to other people, just because I just don't have time. Is Mosai the same as Hashem, Ein Sof, Allah, and Monad? It's sort of. That's such a deep theological question where the answers are just. I'd have to take this piece by piece, and it would take me forever to answer that question. I'm really sorry. I'm gonna have to tap out on that one because it would just take too long. And I'm getting near the end of the stream, and I'm gonna try and get through a few of these. How do you confirm to yourself that you actually communicate to angels? I heard you say you're a magician. How can you be sure you're separating your imagination from reality? I don't know, real world results. Like, for example, I did an angelic magic ritual for 11 days. I asked for abundance. Literally the next day I got $1,000 tip, a tip of $1,000 when I was desperate for money and asked the angels for abundance. I mean, I've had that kind of stuff happen so many times. They've told me things that would happen, and then they happened. They've told me things I didn't know had already occurred that I was able to verify elsewhere. I mean, it's a fair question to ask for sure. But for me, again, the proof is in the pudding. I get a lot of the things that I've experienced. They've been very much my direct experience. And I don't have a lot of evidence to back it up, like in an empirical way. Other than for myself, I would just have to give you anecdotal reports because that's really all I can offer here. Once in a while, they've made certain claims. One of which I went public with at one point that definitely happened, which was they said that there was going to be a banking collapse, and then it happened last spring, and I called it a few months in advance. I had actually thought it would happen. I was partially wrong. They had told me it either happened right before the election or in the early spring, which didn't make a lot of sense to me because economic stuff doesn't happen in the spring. But then Silverbank and a bunch of other banks collapsed. And a bunch of financial people say that those collapses that happened, what is now last spring, are going to be what actually tips over the financial collapse that is exceedingly likely to happen later this year. Yeah, man, I don't know what to tell you other than what I just said. But it's a reasonable and fair question to ask. Radium, Columbus, the Seminole tribe, Old Hebrew correction, where the Moors went after they left Spain. Ian, any thoughts? I haven't heard these theories, so I can't really comment on that. Seminole tribe and a Hebrew connection. I am curious about that. I'm not familiar with where the Moors went after Spain, so I see that, but it's spelled just it's. And I'm not trying to be a dick, just make it communicate more easily. It's Moors without the E for the Moorish people, which is another name for like the Almohads or basically the people who came out of Morocco and northwestern Africa and created a caliphate or whatever you want to call it, a Muslim occupation of Spain, among other things. What's with the Palladian Jesus business? Guessing poor conflation of the stars in his hand and revelation, or gosh, I'm getting tired, and so I might get this wrong. I want to say the Pleiades are next to the constellation of Pisces, or part of the constellation of Pisces. So I think that's where it comes from. There's a lot of this star seed stuff going around out there, and I actually believe it resonates with me as true. There's a lot of nonsense too. It does, for what it's worth, resonate for me as true. And the Pleiades, like I was in Guatemala, and I was in Tikal, and I was sneaking in to listen to a paid guide lead people around, and he mentioned what was on different stelas, and one of them he said, and this one says, I am smoking Jaguar the third or whatever. It was some like royal stela, and he said it said all this stuff, and then it said, and let us never forget that our people come from the Pleiades. And I was like, what? And then he said, yeah, and actually there's an old folklore in Germany that says this, and also in a couple other places, and that was true, actually, all those things. And it's like, what? So yeah, I don't know, like I wonder if that isn't that maybe the Pleiades is a stop that Homo sapiens interstellar has had along the way. Or, you know, some people say it's like entirely different species there. I mean, I don't know the answer to it. It is all very interesting, though. Jabuon associated with the frog as well. I haven't heard that. Wow, that explanation about Kek was 100. Yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah, like Kek's not the only god that resurrected Egyptian god. Also, Isis did, thanks to the terrorist group, actually. And also, before the terrorist group, the show Archer, the cartoon with the spy agency was initially named Isis, and then in like the second or third season, they get rid of that name. And so Isis was already bubbling up in the collective unconscious, and then it burst out. And now, of course, that terrorist organization doesn't super represent the goddess, but what it did was it sort of revivified, because of a lot of people came out and said, hey, that's not who the goddess Isis is about. And a bunch of like women and feminists who were kind of attracted to that sort of thing were like, hey, Isis is this like good goddess, and Isis and Osiris. And people became much more interested in Isis and thought about Isis and gave energy to her, including some amount of people who then started to worship her. I know people who invoke Isis you know, when they do whatever kind of workings. I even had a client who, like, Isis was trying to communicate with them all the time. Isis has been basically resurrected very recently, much like Kek. Although I think Isis has had an ongoing mystery school in Egypt. It could be that Kek does as well. I don't think so, though. But Isis, probably there's a Isis mystery school that's been contiguous since ancient times in Egypt. That would not surprise me at all, because she was such a major figure. I think most of the gods of ancient Egypt are still worshipped in hidden places in Egypt. So Moore County, North Carolina has Carthage as a town. Troy, a couple of towns over, a few others relating as well. Interesting. Huh. Wow, that's quite an interesting strain. Have you read the Aquarian Gospel by Levi? The first chapter goes in depth on the seraphim. I have not. Is that a Gnostic text, or where is it? I would be fascinated. I was able to find very little information from any old source about anything beyond the archangels. I found very scant information on the principalities, the virtues, powers, dominions. There's a little more information about the Ophanim and the cherubim, just a very little bit, and very, very little bit about the seraphim. But basically anything beyond the archangels, there was very, very little information that I was able to find that was credible. So I'm very curious about that. Is that an ancient source, or is that some kind of modern sourcing? And just because it's modern doesn't mean you can have modern revelation, you know, like angels have shown me stuff. So obviously I believe that someone can be in modern times and have a legit contact like that. Interesting. I'm not familiar with it, no. It's positive thoughts, almost encouraging to make better decisions. That's a good sign of that telepathic connection you speak of with the angels. Being sober helps a lot, in my opinion. Yeah, it definitely does. Sobriety. There's certain strains of marijuana that can increase telepathic connection, but it's not wise to ever, like, for example, take heavy psychedelics to have a great breakthrough experience, because very often that'll become a crutch. So yeah, as a general rule, being sober and eating clean and exercising, getting good sleep, like all those basic things to take care of the temple, it really helps. And I could do better on some of those for sure. Is there any god or entity's main function is to help people get enlightened? Yeah, I mean, enlightened masters like Ramana Maharshi, like for example, David Waldman, who I believe is enlightened. His enlightenment story is wild. So this is the way he tells it. he was laying on his friend's couch in his 20s, moaning and complaining, and in his own words, being a little bitch. It's the only time I've heard this man swear, I think. I laughed, and then I felt like, oh, maybe I shouldn't laugh because he's telling this sacred story about his enlightenment. Like, I shouldn't have laughed. But I also was like, nobody laughed at that when he said that. It was a very small, satsang that was around him when he was in Portland back in the day. He's in Portugal now. But anyways, he said that he was laying on his couch being a little bitch, moaning and whinging about his girlfriend, and it was driving his friend nuts. And his friend just one day said to him, man, I don't know, you got to do something, bro. You got to do something. I'm sick of hearing about that girl. Like, I don't know, exercise, meditate or something. And he was like, what's meditation? Because he didn't know what meditation was. This enlightened guy didn't know. And the guy explained it to him in a thumbnail sketch. And he was like, meditation, huh? Not realizing that clearly in many previous lifetimes he had been a monk who had gotten on the doorstep of enlightenment over and over and over again, right? Because the next thing that happens as well, he's like, oh, give this your meditation a shot. And so he meditates and it's like, whoa, and he becomes one with everything, right? He just has total unity consciousness immediately, tremendous depth, and like he completely just meditates for like 2 or 3 hours straight, and his friend comes home and he's in deep meditation, and his friend kind of like jars him out of it, and he's like, oh. And then he starts having dreams about this little old man, as in literally this old man would appear to him who was this tall. It's the way he tells it. And this man would say, I'm going to be your guide. I'm going to help you. And that little man is who he said was his guru and taught him. And then one day he was looking through texts on, basically enlightenment, and he saw a picture of Ramana Maharshi, and he realized that this little man who had been talking to him for years or months or whatever it was Ramana Maharshi, the great sage of Arunachala in India. And so I'm certain he's telling me the truth. I don't believe he's lying at all. And so Ramana exists in a certain like almost demigod state, Ramesh Balsekar. But honestly, there's living people who can help you right now. Yes, you can call out to Ramana Maharshi. Nisargadatta Maharaj is another master who died enlightened. I have his books up there. Right there, I am that. But there's at least 2 living people, one of whom I can certainly vouch for, which is David Waldman. And the other one is, I think Adyashanti is enlightened. I think I have some doubts because of affiliation, but I think we should never damn people based on who they mingle with unless it's lots of people that way. I, for a long time, thought, perhaps I was wrong, perhaps I was duped, but I thought Eckhart Tolle was enlightened, who wrote The Power of Now and A New Earth. Unfortunately, he hangs out with Oprah. That's questionable, right? Not like he hangs out with her all the time, but he's been like on her show several times. His book, The Power of Now, was a huge like rocket fuel for my spiritual development at that time. And it helped me to be able to understand much deeper texts like, where is it? I Am That by Sri Nargasata Maharaj. And so, yeah. Let's see. So I David Waldman, Adyashanti, I think they can both help. There's a guy who does commentary who seems pretty legit. This old Australian guy who does commentary. I don't know what his name is. Who does commentary on Ramana. There's tons of if you just read the text by Ramana Maharshi or listen to his lectures, there's people who like read the transcript of his lectures online. It's going to start affecting your consciousness. Some people are not genuine, which I know, Ian, don't spend your energy explaining to them. They're trolling you, agents everywhere. Yeah. Relating to the person questioning how you know the difference between reality and imagination, the fruits of your labors have manifested into great connections. Yeah, that's certainly true. So, okay. So yeah, let me tell a specific story, right? So this person who asked, you know, and again, fair question to Bobby John. And I don't, this person's being this person to me is clearly being authentic and legitimate and not being a jerk. They're asking a totally fair question, right? That's why I answered it. That bear, whatever the heck guy that I blocked him from the channel earlier, that guy was being hostile, unreasonable. It wasn't that he was questioning me about Tartaria, it was that he was calling me gay, right? And not that I mean, it's such a silly insult to start with, but he was just being disrespectful. I don't find Bobby John here to be disrespectful. So I was shown, and again, you're just going to have to take this as, you can believe my testimony here or not. I'm telling you this happened. So I channeled the virtues sometime, and I guess this would have been 2022 in August. And they showed me all this stuff, most of it in heavily symbolic form. And then they showed me, they said, this is the most important thing we've ever shown you. And I was like, okay, that's pretty intense. And they showed me this thing that looked to my eye like a mushroom cloud. And I was like, oh my God, because I couldn't understand what it was. And I thought it was a mushroom cloud. And so I was like, oh God, are they going to have a nuke go off in Ukraine? Because I was thinking, well, the angels said there won't be a nuclear holocaust, but there could be tactical nukes used. They have said that, by the way, both those things. And I was like, or maybe Taiwan, China, or maybe Pakistan and India will go up or something. I was just trying to think. It's like, oh God, or maybe a terrorist attack. And they wouldn't tell me what it meant. They just go silent, and pretty much my contact with them shortly there ended, except for they said, this will change your life forever within 2 weeks. And I was like, what? And so they, about 10 days go by and I get this text and it says, hi, is this Ian? And I was getting tons of scammer texts at the time, but I decided to just say yes. I don't know why, I just did, even though I was blocking people for like nothing at that point in time, because I got a raft of scammers around that time. And he goes, oh yeah, I like your channel, man. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Who is this? So I've asked him now twice, who is this? And he says, I think I might want to learn angelic magic from you. And I was like, okay, that's great. And all of this is great, but please identify yourself, because I don't know who I'm talking to. And I'm about ready to block you because this is now the third time I've asked. And so he goes, okay, my name is, because I don't want to say what his name is. I'm this many years old. I'm married. I have 2 kids. I did the real estate agent, all this kind of stuff, right? And I was just like, whoa, a simple first name would have done, dude, you know? And I really love this guy. He's a great guy. We're friends now. And we weren't then, though. I didn't know who he was. And he said, I then said, okay. And he's like, yeah, I want to learn angelic magic from you. And I think some other people I know want to as well. And I was like, oh, okay, fair enough. And he then sends me a picture of his angelic magic altar. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then he sends me a picture of that exact fucking thing I saw, that mushroom cloud looking thing. And I go, oh my God, what is that? Right? Because this, my full attention's on this person, right? And he goes, I'm like, oh my God, what is that? And he says, it's the burning bush, brother, like Moses saw. And I go, oh, because like if you think of like a manicured bush that's skinny here and then goes up to a plump bulb, right? Like probably that's not what the burning bush that Moses looked like, wouldn't have been that symmetrical. But if you think about it, it has that same shape of, if you imagine a burning stalk and then a burning bush, it would look like a lot like a mushroom cloud if you didn't know what you were looking at. If you didn't have any context, you would actually think mushroom cloud before burning bush, which is what I did. So I go, holy shit, what is it? He goes, it's the burning bush. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. So he then introduced me to Josh Amaro, who's now been on the channel, who he trains frickin' Navy SEALs in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and trains special forces around the world. Total badass dude. And he's one of my best friends now. But he introduced me to Josh and then 3 of Josh's friends. And then one of Josh's 3 friends goes, I got to introduce you to this buddy of mine. And this buddy of mine is going to be way into this whole Luciferian Malachian thing. And I was like, okay. And so that guy, he actually happens to live in Oregon like me, whereas all these other guys lived in California and like Southern California. This other man lived in Oregon, here in Oregon. And so I met him in person, and I wasn't too sure what to think of him. But this guy is like, has this crazy kind of genius to where he's able to just understand how to organize things, and refine processes. And so he's worked for like SpaceX and Nike and Delta Force and Kanye West back in the day, helping him with this fashion line, turning it into this thing. And he turns people who are like 5 millionaires into worth 500 million. Like he like 10x's people. That's what he says he does, right? And so he then introduced me to, I won't identify more about this person, but their name was Solomon, a man named Solomon, which is wild, right? Because this all started with Solomonic theurgic magic of the angels. And then that man introduced me to this other man who is now my mentor, the smartest human being I've ever met in my life, bar none. I feel like a drooling vegetable next to this man. I'm not even slightly exaggerating. This guy is fucking so next. He's like 3 standard deviations smarter than me, something like that. I don't even know. And I just can't talk about this man's identity. It doesn't matter. But he's been helping me just work on businessy stuff. And actually, I might end up the oft discussed mega career thing. I may be able to do that. I finally solved something that's been plaguing me for months. So it may be that I'm going to be working for this man who's my mentor here in the not too distant future. And so that's a tremendous opportunity, life-changing. If that comes through, it'll completely change my life. But wait, there's more. Then I'm sitting there. Again, I'm just telling you, I'm just relating my experience. None of this is going to work if you have an empirical mindset. It kind of comes down to whether or not you trust my testimony here. I get that. So I'm just going to keep telling you the story, though. So I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting there in this chair, and I'm not going to explain what I was doing, but I was just kind of chilling and waiting, biding time, and all of a sudden, boom, down comes, might have been Raziel. I can't remember. It was either Archangel Raziel or Archangel Metatron. And the way they appear to me is I can see them to some degree in my mind's eye, but mostly I feel them as an energetic presence. And then they communicate with me telepathically, and they have distinct voices. And so I think it was Raziel, but I'm not 100%. But it comes down and he says, Ian, you've been phenomenally patient. You've done all this. You've done all these good works. We've seen your merit, and we've tested your faith by things not coming through. If you're ready to move into another level, like you're now ready to move into that and rub shoulders with very powerful people. But I have to warn you, if you do that, you'll be more on the radar sort of the bad guys, basically, right? But that your family would be divinely protected. And they said, do you consent? Do you agree? Are you ready to take this opportunity? And I said, and then they kind of were somewhat mysterious beyond that. And I said, okay. And they said, you're going to connect with a very powerful person very shortly, and that this person, then you will work for them, and then it will open more doors down the road. 2 days later, that same guy who had introduced me to this man named Solomon, which is the only name I'm going to give just because it's Solomonic magic, it's kind of wild, who then was kind of a leapfrog for me as other people. This other man, who I'm also friends with now, he introduced me to, and he's just one of these super networker people. He introduced me to someone who I'm probably going to have to sign an NDA, like we've already discussed an NDA, but I will just say it's a family to where if I just said the last name, everybody in the West would know exactly who they are. I can't because I'm not supposed to, so of course I won't. They're doing really good work. This person is a bit different from the rest of their family, or a lot different from the rest of their family. They're really a good person, and they're doing really good work in the world. And they simply asked me to help them with a number of things, particularly in the form of astrology. And so I've been working for them, and actually I've about to like probably re-up with like a new contract with them essentially. So again, I literally can't provide proof, and like it's frustrating because I can't mention the name of, I don't want to mention the name of my mentor who I love, and I don't want that just, he is someone who mixes in high levels, and like it could cause him problems, so I'm not going to mention his name. And this other person I was just talking about, I literally we've already discussed an NDA. And so while I haven't signed a non-disclosure agreement yet, right? Because could be potentially, it's actually because it could be potentially embarrassing for them if they got out that they were getting advice from me. So again, you can believe that or not, you can take that or leave that, but that is my experience. I'm telling you the truth. Again, you don't have to believe me. So let's see here, going back. And I do need to end here very, very, very shortly, but I'm actually glad I got to share that story. Let's see. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Look Within. You spurred that whole thing. All right, cool. See you later, Relic One. Have a good one, brother. See, Ska931. I meant spiritual being an entity that helps people to get enlightened. Yeah, so Kuan Yin. I knew what you meant. Enlightenment is both takes a tremendous amount of effort and is effortless. It usually takes a tremendous amount of effort to get to the door of enlightenment, and then you just kind of one day effortlessly stumble through it and realize it, like, you're already enlightened. Everybody is. What actually has to happen is you have to get rid of that which makes you unenlightened. And that's the trick, because it's so simple. It's so simple that our mind overlooks it. Our mind makes everything more complex than it actually is. You're already enlightened. You're already one with everything. And on the deepest level, that's already true. The very fact that you're interested in getting enlightened means your soul will become enlightened if there's enough incarnations. It could even happen in this lifetime. That's one of the things about Kali Yugas. It's very powerful for rapidly attaining enlightenment. Yeah, I like Vivekananda. I'm not super into those teachings, but yeah, I like Vivekananda. Definitely good. Humble view, respect. Yeah, I'm not sure what you said, but thank you. Zachary Hansen, how do you spell these enlightened masters' names? Oh yeah, so let me just put David Waldman, aka Deva G. So that's one. And I'll just real quick put that up. He has a channel on YouTube. I forget what it's called. Let me look it up real quick. And I'll put that up in there as well. He's a bit odd, but you're kind of a bit odd when you are enlightened. It makes you very different from everyone else. So his website is called David G. Heart of Silence. And this just shows you that humans are retarded and we have no whatever. The fact that I have more than 5 times as many subscribers as David G is insane. I planned it's wrong. It's wrong. This man is so light years beyond what I'm doing in helping humanity, but most people are just not ready for what he teaches. Most people are just not ready. It's repellent to the Western mind. What I mean by that is it's not anything bad. I mean, you literally don't do anything physical. So it's all about like an internal adjustment, but it's repellent to the ego and the mind. And that's something you will have to overcome in order to master, to become enlightened. You're going to have to overcome the limitations of the mind and the ego. But also a lot of people fall into a trap of trying to kill the mind and ego, and then that becomes its own dog chasing a tail thing. I mean, there's a reason why so few people become enlightened. It's so insanely easy that it's almost impossible to do. So a book I can recommend wholeheartedly is I Am That by Nisargadatta Maharaj. And then any of the teachings of Ramana Maharshi. And Ramana is so pure. Oh, there's nothing more pure than the teachings of Ramana Maharshi. There's nothing more pure. And I've never been more certain about any human being ever in all of history than Ramana Maharshi. If there is such a thing as enlightenment, Ramana Maharshi is enlightened. Absolutely. Just absolutely incredible. And then Nisargadatta Maharaj, I Am That. Those are the books I have up there. Right there. It's a 2-book volume of his talks. So, okay. All right, let's see. All right. SK, and then I got to get off here soon, people. My family's going to murder me when I get off. You blew my mind when you said that logic and reasons are products of Luciferian consciousness. Well, I think so, yeah. I don't want to say that logic and reason. So logic and reason, actually, this is great from what I was just talking about. This is a great back-to-back questions because, yeah, so in a certain sense, you could say that Malachianism is learning to move past self-hatred and this really limited, like, predator-prey domination kind of game. Then you get to a much more complicated domination game of, like, to where it's not about might makes right, it's about cleverness makes right to a certain degree. And so logic and reason are smack dab in the middle of that, but it elevates you out of that, like, really low trash. But the problem with the Luciferians is if the Malachians are dumb, the Luciferians are hyper intelligent, but they lack wisdom. And the Most High then has wisdom. But then the non-dual people are like, okay, you've transcended those other levels. You need to even transcend that. You need to transcend everything. And you need to realize that everything and nothing are one. Advaita Vedanta means, it means, it's more complicated than this, but it means essentially not two, which seems like it means one, but it doesn't, because it's closer to almost zero, because it's this thing that is everything and nothing simultaneously, and we're swimming in that consciousness at all times. But that's why I said to that person earlier, you're already enlightened. You just have to remove that which keeps you unenlightened. And I haven't done this. I just understand this. Adyashanti says that enlightenment has to hit in 3 levels. The intellectual, it's hit for me there a long, long time ago. I understand it intellectually. The heart level, I feel like it's hit there. And then the gut level. And he says the gut level is the hardest to release. And that's the one I've never been able to release, I think, because of, like, my trauma. I think I had to go on this journey with the angels and so forth to heal my trauma. And now I actually plan to, in the later stage of my life, if I'm blessed to have that kind of longevity, that I will pursue enlightenment at the end of my life. That may be something that I do. But I feel very driven to try and help people now and create these golden age enclaves, because of the angels have helped me to heal, and I want to help others to heal, and I want to help bring humanity to this next level of consciousness. Is there any specific diet that the angels have recommended? Well, for one thing, they don't like alcohol. They really don't like alcohol. Weed, they tolerate, as long as you're not stoned out of your gourd when you do ritual magic with them. They don't like that. They've called me out. I have the heating pad back there. Oops. I have the heating pad back here, right? Because of the old back. So I have to be careful, and I have to be careful not to overdo it with weed. I really just need to get back to yoga. It's just, God, during this time of the year, it's so hard. It just hurts so bad. And if I'm not already in the midst of doing yoga a lot, frequently, and even a lot when I am, usually just this time of year, it just hurts too much to not smoke weed. Yeah, broke my back in a car wreck. What can I say? But they don't like opiates. They don't like speed. They really don't like any of that. They basically recommend clean living. They're like I say, they're tolerant of marijuana as like a pain killing thing. There's something about opiates that lowers the consciousness more. Weed kind of puts you in a wavy consciousness where you go higher and lower, whereas it just drops you down. I haven't really asked them about psychedelics, so I don't know. As to food, they have said they're clearly fine with me eating meat, because they've never said I couldn't eat meat. They have said a couple of times that I needed to purify myself and not eat meat before specific rituals. Some of the rituals I did back in the day were insane. They were like 44 days straight where I would do 2 to 3 hour rituals communing with the angels as I was passing through the gates to the higher spheres. It took so much time and dedication. I'm really proud of this. Is what I will give myself a pat on the back. That level of dedication and perseverance and facing my shadow that I had to do. I mean, the angels literally said that, like, there's people who are better than you in a lot of ways, but they didn't have the sort of resilience I did to kind of have to sort through all my bullshit and shortcomings, which I'm still, you know, I still like, I don't know why I'm getting like a little teared up. I still struggle with stuff like when people say stupid comments that I really should just let go. Like they bother me. So clearly I still have stuff that I need to work through, but I've done a tremendous amount of work. And sometimes before some of those rituals, they would tell me to not eat meat, but it was usually for a very short period of time. It wasn't like for the entire ritual of 44 straight days, you know. And I was literally doing, you know, 44 is the longest. That was the seraphim level. But I was often doing rituals that lasted like 33 days, where every single day I would spend 2 to 3 hours basically meditating and communing with the angels and going through this internal process. It started out with me doing external things, doing acts of charity in the external world, but eventually it turned into a very internal process. It's invocation, right? Angelic stuff is invocation rather than evocation as demons to change the outer. Before the food pyramid consists of meat, but the new food pyramid heart. Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because it weakens you and makes you more susceptible. It lowers testosterone. Always a goal of theirs. Oh, thank you. That's lovely to say. That would be wonderful. Which families are Luciferian? Oh gosh, I'm not going to be able to get to all these, I don't think. Holy smokes, there's a bunch more. I mean, the Trump family seems to the certain families that originate from Florence in Italy. Florence was the hotbed. So, and there's a lot of crossover between Malachi and Luciferian families, especially the further back you go in history, right? It's only very recently that they're starting to truly separate. Before, they were very intermixed and intertwined. So like the Medicis, because Cosimo Medici translated the Hermetica, which is probably the most important breakthrough moment for the Luciferian consciousness of this past 6,000 years, was the translating of the Hermetica and the impact that had on the Renaissance and then the Enlightenment and just modern science galore. So let's see. So the Medicis are a family I can say has at least Luciferian members to it. Are there levels to enlightenment? Yeah. So like you become enlightened, and basically it's like you leave the gravity well of the planet, but then there's an infinite amount of space to journey in once you've been free of that gravity well of the ego and consciousness. And so Ramana Maharshi, for my money, has attained the highest level of enlightenment maybe ever. Some people say Kuan Yin attained the highest level ever of enlightenment. There are levels, but it doesn't matter. It's like once you reach that escape velocity, then it's just how deep, how long do you want to go? It seems like once you achieve escape velocity, it's borderline impossible to fall back into ego. But again, that man that I mentioned earlier, who I dearly love, he seemed borderline enlightened back in the day, the mystic, who then blew up and went on Oprah and all this stuff. And it's not Eckhart Tolle. It's a different mystic. I don't want to say who they are. I actually love that person dearly because they helped me to end addictions, but their ego came roaring back. And I thought they were enlightened for a long time, but they had some amount of ego that was still left, and it dragged them back down. So there is a level, it seems, where you go forever, for as long as you want to go. It's really about how much effort you put in. Find Buddhism boring because there's not much done physically, like rituals and stuff. They find meditation and philosophy boring. Yeah. It could have been that's part of why I moved into the more esoteric. I think as I needed to heal my severe PTSD. That's what it was. Thank you so much. It's a blessing what you're doing. Challenging to find legitimate and safe information regarding angel magic. Yeah, if you guys can't afford to take my class, just send me an email and I will at least give you the book. There's pitfalls that I explain to people in the class. There's a lot of tips I give on efficacy. There's tips I give on how to perfect things. There's a lot of things that I give that has a tremendous amount of value, and I have a lot of knowledge about it. But the class I teach is heavily from a book. I will be teaching higher levels of magic. I have to do it this year. The angels have now said, you got to do it this year. They haven't said that to me before. So I'm going to be teaching an archangelic magic class at some point. But this will be a prerequisite, the 72 Shem Angel, the regular angelic magic class that I teach. I hope someday to be able to teach people about the principalities and the virtues powers, dominions, Ophanum, cherubim, and seraphim. I hope to be able to teach people how to do that. Some of that will be a very personal journey. I don't know. It's probably at some point I teach people and they get to a certain level and then they just have to go off on their own kind of internal journey. I don't know the degree to which I can help people because it becomes so internal at some point. Yeah, you do have to be careful. But yeah, send me an email and I can at least send you the name of the book. But, you know, if you can afford it, I know I give incredible value for an incredible amounts of time to my students, and most of my students now love me, and like, you know, some of them are friends of mine, and we have a forum that former students are on where we talk about all kinds of stuff, and it's pretty awesome. So you know, if you have the means, then take the class from me, and if not, send me an email and I'll tell you the name of the book. But there's certain things about the book that I don't like that I explain in the class that I think are very, very, very dangerous stuff that's in the book. Somehow it's just that they got the ritual correct, and they also got the angelic powers and the angelic calls, which it's from at least medieval, if not ancient sources. I believe it's ancient sources. That part's correct. There's certain editorializing they do in the early part of the book that I disagree with the most vehement of terms. And so I that's one of the reasons I don't just talk about the book in public, you know, because I don't, they produce lots of different kinds of magical texts, this group that produce the text that I teach from. And some of the stuff is dark that they do. They're gray magicians. They do demonic magic, elemental magic, other kinds of spirits. In addition to angelic magic, it's just that they basically they're just like a really good source for a well-known, widely spread ritual, which I've referred to earlier in this session, around the Shem angels and the Shem talismans that comes to us from a Jewish source. And so like all the speaking is done in Hebrew. It's just the purest form. There's probably other forms of angelic magic out there, but the one that we have that's really well trodden and reliable comes from a Jewish source, and it was used in esoteric and magical circles in the West for centuries, you know, and probably maybe much longer than that if it is truly sourced with Solomon, which I believe to be true, but I can't prove that, certainly not in an academic sense. It's called Solomonic magic. And I do Solomonic theurgic magic. Theurgic is magic of God, right? The Most High, as opposed to thaumaturgy, which is demonic magic. I would never be able to spell those names. Yeah, probably not. Thank you. Everyone enjoy this live. You're welcome. I'm pretty much done here. Are the Malachians down if they get that deity seems super limited in its vision. That deity dominates Lucifer during the Kali Yugas and basically has a gun to Lucifer's head the way like Jewish scientists during the Nazi war. Lucifer has no choice, or maybe he does have a choice, but he chooses to in order to be close to power. Lucifer kisses the ring of Moloch, and then that's where that comes from. Moloch, the being itself, I wouldn't say he's stupid. I don't think he has much vision. I don't think he can see well outside of his realm. I'm not certain of that, but yeah, you're right. Moloch is not stupid, definitely not. But something about his energy dulls the intellect of his followers would maybe be a better way of putting it. And it certainly gives him tremendous hubris. That being definitely has limitless hubris because it always wants to kill and replace. It just wants to destroy all life and just be totally dominant, and wants to, Malachian Satanists want to kill a god. Lucifer want to replace God with the guy with the thumbs, narcissism, and by extension Lucifer, right? Because it's the sin of pride, right? Thinking that you know better than God, right? Or the Most High. And so, yeah. And I do need to end here very shortly. Did you try the mudras? I haven't yet. Did you send them an email to me, bro? Like, maybe if you could send it again. Man, this week has been nutty. And so I have not yet tried the mudras. Mudras, by the way, for people who don't know, are certain like different hand positions. You can even feel if you touch with certain things, you know, and you'll see like the Buddha, you know, you'll see Jesus sometimes going like this. That's a mudra. There's, it's just different hand positions, and it changes the way the energy moves in the brain. Acupuncture cupping. Yeah, moxa does help. I don't know. I don't find acupuncture to have been super helpful for whatever reason. St. John's wort helps a lot. Magnesium important also. Thank you. Wait. Why is there so much magic in Italy? Is it some portal or something? I don't know. I mean, they've certainly ripped open portals at this point. I think it's more that from a geostrategic point of view, Italy is God tier because you have the Alps up in the top, and then you have this big long peninsula, and it's surrounded by an ocean. And other than Sicily, there aren't islands to where there'd be like a good place to stage an attack. And so if you try and come over land, you run into the problem that Hannibal did out of Carthage, where he took the elephants over the pass. The Alps are just a natural defense. And if you just look visually, like if you just look, oh, well, here, I'll show you with the globe here. It's kind of hard to tell, but if you just look at where Italy is, it's smack dab in the middle of the Mediterranean, and it's super easy to project power from there while also simultaneously being very difficult to attack. So I think it's just a natural geostrategic geography-informed decision, because they just kind of moved there because that's where wealth and political power was in the form of the Roman Republic and then Roman Empire, respectively, and that they just were taking advantage of the political temporal power that was there and then manipulating it with magic, if that makes sense. Can a person come down from enlightenment? I kind of already answered that question. Awesome. Sending an email about the book ASAP. Discernment always gets some rusty in. Sorry for flooding your chat. Good to see you, though. Take care, everyone. Awesome. Right on. Oh, yay. Well, that's kind of like a demon of madness. If you're really interested in demonic stuff, Legion of Lilith is a great source if you're interested in demonic stuff. I don't like to get super deep in the weeds. I know I talk about Moloch and Lucifer all the time, but I don't really like talking about the other Qliphothic spirits, just because they're, and that one in particular is a madness demon that like is just very like, I don't like to tap into that energy, even talk about it. It's in some ways that demon is more off-putting to me than Moloch, in a sense, because know your enemy, right? And Moloch is the focus of what I want to be a part of overthrowing, right? So anyways, all right. I'm going to go ahead and call it here, ladies and gents. Have a good one, and I will catch you on the flip side. Take care, everyone. Oh, and the Angelic Magic class is open registration until midnight tonight, although I probably won't close it down completely until tomorrow. So if you're interested in going deeper on angelic magic, that's the answer. And I will see you guys next time. Take care. All right. Bye-bye.